For those wondering what that message was, it was just the backup stream being set up. So it's not we're not live yet, quite yet. So just so everyone knows what to expect today, I fully anticipate there will be members on the call that lose power and internet due to the wind. So hopefully it's not too distracting. I will give a thumbs up. Um, let's see, when my cell phone says around 7 o'clock, cell phones should all have the same time.
I lost a giant tree in my backyard about 2 hours ago. A big old pine tree. It was about 60 feet high. It took out my clothesline.
Well, you're lucky then. That's all it took out. Could have taken out the house.
Yeah, it looks like the fire department is inundated this evening with wires down and transformer explosions um, across across the town. Quite a few of them.
I just have to run and get my cell phone so I can time the delegations. I'll be right back.
What's going on?
And not about yourself.
Not bad. Not bad. Closed early just for the weather, and then it didn't hit until like now, but it's fine.
Yeah.
We had the spark thing tomorrow, so we're good.
Okay. Yeah,
Can you
we had
guys
a
hear
whole.
me?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, your screech is a mayor.
Okay, I'm going to start in about 5 seconds.
Dave, did we
And,
have, sorry,
okay.
Dave, did we have anybody show up tonight at town hall?
No, no one has come in. I
Okay.
haven't physically checked the door, but I assume that if they were at the door, they would be coming in. So I'll let Patty know if someone does come in.
Great. Hi, Mr. Stilich, how are you? I think you're still connecting to audio, so if you could just wait 1 minute, Dave, so we'll get Mr. Stilich connected to audio. There he is. Great. Hi, Mr. Stilich. I'm going to ask you if you turn your camera off just until we get to your portion of the meeting, and then I'll ask you to unmute and turn your camera on. Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, Dave, whenever you're ready.
Okay, in 3.
Welcome, everyone, to our council meeting for Wednesday, February the 28th. Due to the inclement weather this evening, we decided to do the entire meeting electronically, and we hope that that hasn't inconvenienced anyone. Also want to acknowledge that it's Pink Shirt Day, so it's great to see everybody donning their pink. And I'll start by telling you that this meeting is being audio and video recorded and live streamed on the Town of Innisfil's YouTube channel and shall form part of the record for which we will be retained in accordance to the town's retention bylaw. And for more information, please contact the clerk's office for that. And now I'll ask Councillor Drodge for the land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The town of Innisfil acknowledges that Innisfil is situated on treaty land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history. The town also acknowledges that the land is the traditional territories of the First Peoples of Turtle Island. It is shared between the Anishinaabe people of Beausoleil, the First Nations, Chippewa of Rama First Nations, and the Chippewa of Georgina Island First Nations, and we thank them for their generations of stewardship. This meeting is still home to many Indigenous people, and as settlers, we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. The town acknowledges the forced sacrifices that are the foundation of Canadian society today. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit.
Thank you so much, Councillor. So we'll acknowledge we have quorum, but I do notice, Madam Clerk, that Councillor Zanella has not joined us as yet, and I just wondered if someone could check with her to make sure that she's not having any technical difficulties.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe she should be joining the meeting momentarily. Actually, I see her coming in right now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So with that, then I'll ask Madam Clerk, has there been anybody registered for open forum this evening?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, we do not have anyone registered for open forum.
Thank you. So then we'll go on to the approval of the agenda. There is a number of delegations this evening, as you can see on the screen, that have been added for tonight's meeting. And unfortunately, Ms. Weiss from the Innisfil Historical Society has to postpone to another day. So with those changes, could I please ask for a mover and a seconder, please, to approve the agenda as amended? That's moved by Councillor Drodge and seconded by Councillor Richardson. All those in favor? That is carried. Next, we'll go to disclosures of interest. Does anyone have a notice of disclosure of interest this evening? I see none. I would like to make a statement, however, that on the town's facilities master plan, one of the town facilities is adjacent to my home that is going to be discussed in the report tonight. So I did reach out to our Integrity Commissioner, John Mascaron, to make sure that the proximity wouldn't cause me to have a conflict, and he's assured me that I do not have a conflict. So I just wanted to place that on the record. And then next we'll go to number 5, which is presentations and petitions. We have none of those this evening. Then we'll go to item number 6, delegations by members of the public. So our first delegation is from Merlene Boken from Christmas for Kids All Year Long. And Ms. Boken, I see you're with us here. Welcome, and
Thank you.
thank you for adopting to our virtual format. And I've got 10 minutes on the clock, and you're welcome to start whenever you like.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you regarding the facilities master plan. Our relationship with the town over the past decade has been one of mutual support. It was recognized decades ago that Innisfil needed a charity safety net. Several of our school principals highlighted the fact that they were seeing a lot of children living in poverty in their schools, and we were approached about starting a charity. Using Barrie and the province of Ontario as benchmarks, just over 1 in 5 children in Innisfil over the age of 17 live in poverty, slightly higher than Barrie and the Ontario average. Educational levels are lower in Innisfil than our benchmarks, and more of our population are working in trades, making them vulnerable to layoffs and work slowdowns. Many of these jobs do not carry benefit packages for disability. In return for providing that safety net, the town has worked with us and has given us the basement of 19 Queen Street, the old library in Cookstown, for our much needed storage. That support enables us to ensure that children in Innisfil are fed, have warm clothing, back to school supplies, and can celebrate special holidays. In addition to the storage space, the town has been kind enough to give us the Stroud Banquet Hall for 10 days each Christmas to sort and distribute our hampers. I realize that you are just receiving this report, and we feel it is important to make our comments known right out of the gate. As you are aware, Christmas for Kids, soon to be Community for Kids, and the Food Bank are the only 2 frontline charities in Innisfil. We are both carrying a very heavy load. As the demand for our services has more than doubled in the past 5 years in terms of numbers and the programs we offer, the storage of donations of coats, boots, backpacks, toiletries, school supplies has become vital to the existence of our operation. I do not think that the town would leave us on the sidewalk, nowhere to go. But the master plan does not really make us feel very secure. Over the past few years, the town and the foundation have brought community leaders that handle the needs of vulnerable populations together. I have attended 4 of these meetings, 2 for the foundation, 1 for gangs and violence, or guns and gangs or something, and another one that I can't remember the name. But anyways, there's a lot of us there. We all have the interests of the town, and there's 2 things that I notice at every single meeting. Number 1, most of the people sitting around the table are from Barrie, because a lot of our services are still being handled out of Barrie. And the other thing, we have very fruitful conversations, and we always end up talking about a hub, or it's always the hub, but we talk about the need to solidify our services and be able to make more of a one-stop shop for people rather than having to go between Barrie and Innisfil. However, those conversations always come to the slow, sad end. Innisfil doesn't have a lot of space. And so we say, well, and I always bring in my little thing. Oh, what about the orbit? And, I don't know what's happening with that, but, will there be an opportunity there in the longer term? So those discussions don't tend to go anywhere. I was recently called by Contact Community Services to tour the Bradford and Innisfil facilities, the clothesline. The purpose of that meeting was to discuss working together to have a store in Innisfil like the Clothesline, a self-supporting charity shop. The 4 of us in attendance thought it was a great idea, thought we could work together, but the whole thing came to an end. And basically Howard Courtney says, well, we have a space crunch in Innisfil. There's nowhere really to put it. And that conversation has come to an abrupt end. In addition, I've been doing grant writing for a few charities in Barrie that work with the homeless and vulnerable populations. In looking at the homeless enumeration, they're not included in the census because they don't have a permanent address. So Simcoe County does an enumeration every 2 years. And I was shocked, although I shouldn't have been shocked, but I was seeing it in black and white to see that although Innisfil is the third largest community in Simcoe, and some may argue we could be fourth, it depends what Bradford's doing. We're always neck and neck with Bradford. We're in the only top tier communities that have nothing for homeless, youth, battered women, or families in transition. All of our vulnerable people must leave their community and travel to Barrie, Orillia, Collingwood, Alliston, or Bradford to get assistance. So I'm looking at the master plan, cognizant of all of this information as I have just laid out. In our opinion, the plan, I mean, people have said to me, well, the plan is just looking at community facilities and the status of them and the condition of them, but that's not all that the plan does. It does lay out recommendations on expansion, divestiture, repurposing, and discusses what people think who live in the town. So for this kind of information to be in the master plan, I feel there needs to be some solid research behind it. I'm used to master plans. I did it for, that's what I did as a living. I was a consumer consultant for many years. And usually a master plan would cover three main areas. It would cover what you've got now, what you wish you had now, and then what you need in the future based on plans and population growth. I feel this master plan only covers that first tiny bit. Although it said that they did interview people that were using the facilities. They did speak to me and others that are using the facilities. What about everybody else? What about everybody else that's serving the needs of Innisfil from Barrie? What about, contact services, the Seniors Wish, Mother, Daughter Empower, all the other charities, all the other groups in Innisfil, to get some kind of a feel of what kind of space we really need in Innisfil. Is there an inventory of space in the town not owned by the town that could compensate for lack of town-owned space? I asked one official if there was any other space anywhere, and they simply said, I don't know. The public input analysis does not follow best practices for consumer research. There is no mention of methodology. Now, I could be wrong, and maybe somewhere deep in the depths of that report, it's there, but I couldn't find it. What questions were asked? We have a pie chart at the end that tells us where people live. As soon as I looked at the pie chart, I could see that it was skewed towards Alcona, Big Bay Point, and Stroud. Cookstown isn't even mentioned as a separate group. Cookstown is 4% of the total population of Innisfil. So on a sample of 400, 16 people should have been from Cookstown. So I don't see where they were included. We do not have any demographics on their age, educational levels, or anything. We could have interviewed all the wealthy people. I mean, they talk about a pickleball court and the need for facilities, outdoor arenas, and so forth. Well, that's fine, but what about low-income groups? What did they think? What did New Canadians think? It's hard to get their responses in surveys, but you have to go to extra lengths to get that information. As you can see, our concerns here are not just for Christmas for Kids, but for all groups that are trying to provide services and the overall general lack of space in Innisfil. The casual mention in the report that we can add space to the Stroud facility doesn't really cut it for me. I was also disappointed that although I spent time last summer and was interviewed by a committee doing this, nothing of what I said made it into the report. Basically, they said that they interviewed me and that we use the facility for storage. At some point, I think Innisfil is going to have to come to terms with its size and also the need to grow the infrastructure to add space. Charities and other groups that support the town's population need to be supported. We're not just volunteers that are expected to carry on a huge load, really, especially today. And at the same time, we're now fighting for our space. It's exhausting for us, actually. So in final, I would say that it's my understanding that in the next 5 to 10 year time frame, you will probably be in a position to expand the 2 arenas, add space. I'm assuming, since you're in the secondary plan phase of the orbit, that there might be some plan at some point to add to the orbit or add community services, support services to the orbit. But all those discussions can then take place. proper consumer feedback can be gotten. And I'm thinking that if you're going to divest Queen Street, do it when in the 8 to 10 year time frame, which in the report it does say 8 years. They thought it had 8 years, if I read that statistic correctly. You don't sort of throw out your old shoes and walk in bare feet for 5 years before you can afford to buy a new pair. And we are going to be in a very vulnerable position if we cannot keep some space in that facility. So I see divestiture of 19 Queen Street more in the 8 to 10 year time period, not immediately. Thank you very much for hearing me out.
Sorry, Ms. Vulcan. Thank you so much for being here tonight and for your delegation. Questions or comments to Ms. Vulcan? Councillor Drodge.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to thank you, Marlene, for the presentation. It was very insightful, and you've definitely given a different take on how to look at this moving forward. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I had a couple. So first of all, I want you to know how much we appreciate what Christmas for Kids or Community for Kids does for our community all year round. So thank you so much for that. We are, I would say not fourth. I would say in Simcoe County, we're, I guess if you're counting Barrie. So,
No. I actually looked it up.
So who's ahead of us?
So Barrie is ahead of you. Bradford is ahead of you. So Barrie and Bradford are slightly ahead of you.
Okay.
So that puts us at number 3.
Okay. And New Tech, we're all about, so Bradford, New Tech, and Innisfil are all about the same as far as population is concerned. And I do totally agree with you that because of our proximity to Barrie, we do lose out on a lot of the social services that the County of Simcoe distributes amongst its lower tiers. So, there's 16 lower tiers in Simcoe County, and Simcoe County is the upper tier. And they distribute the county funds for social services, be it affordable housing or monies for places such as contact shelters throughout Simcoe County. And unfortunately, even though we have a very large population, for instance, we have about 10,000 population more than Orillia. But Orillia is considered the hub for Oro-Medonte and Severn and tiny townships. So they get a lot more than we do. So I would agree with you there that we do need to fight for more of our social services dollars from our county, the dollars that we send to our county.
Good.
Thank you. Sorry to cough. Anyone else? Any other comments? Seeing none, I will go to our next presenter then, please. Thank you very much for that presentation.
Oh, am I supposed to leave now?
No, you have a couple of choices. You can leave and go about your evening. You can stay on the line and just turn off your camera and you can stay with us, or you can join the live stream, whatever you prefer. I'm gonna, spoiler alert, excuse me. There's going to be a motion, I believe a little later on, that this be received tonight and come back on the, help me, Councillor Drodge.
27th of March.
27th of March, because our fear is that there are groups maybe whose hockey rink is involved or something's involved that they may not have heard about this happening. And we want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to provide input. And that will be voted on in a little while. I'm sorry for my horrible cough.
Oh, that's okay. You poor thing.
Thank you. So yeah, you take one of those choices.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
and mover and a seconder, please, to receive this item. Counselor Drodge and Counselor Zanella, all those in favor? Thank you so much. We have another delegation this evening regarding the same report, and it's from Jason Tizard, and Jason is with the Stroud Curling Club. Are you with us, Jason?
Yes, I'm here. Can everybody hear me?
We certainly can, and we can see you now too. So thank you.
Awesome.
And I'll set my counter for 10 minutes. So please start whenever you're ready.
Well, I don't think I'll take all the 10 minutes. My biggest thing is obviously coming on here and kind of going into the fact that we're a little obviously maybe confused by the announcement that went out, or the report that went out, obviously with some of the info that was in it, the repairs that need to be done to the building and that kind of stuff. One of the biggest things obviously for us is that we are very much a community hub. I feel being part of Stroud and the Innisfil and, well, I guess Simcoe County really community since the early 1900s, and being able to bring in some pretty big things over that time. We are 112 years in existence, and obviously we're since the 1970s in the building that we're in now. Currently, obviously, we've had a couple of years where we obviously got knocked back with COVID, and we're slowly starting to rebuild everything. And through everything that we've been through in the past little bit, obviously, we're starting to grow again, which is great. Our biggest thing, obviously, again, like I said, is we want to make sure that we're heard. We do believe that our building is in good condition. It does need some upgrades, obviously, but some of the numbers, like I said, are very confusing to us. One of which, obviously, is the initial report of the $10 million to rebuild our facility, and then going up to shortly in the report, it says $32 million. So obviously there's some concerns there as far as, making sure that everybody understands that we're confused about those numbers, and obviously confused about some of the stuff that's happening in the report. Well, actually this weekend, I don't know if anybody is around this weekend, but we will have 48 elementary school teams, as I hope most of you are aware. 48 elementary school teams will be taking part in the elementary school championship, Ontario Elementary School Championship, in not only the Stroud Arena, but also we've had to bring in a couple of other curling clubs as well. We brought in the Cookstown Curling Club as well as the Alliston Curling Club. So we're very proud of that. And like I said, that's one thing that really has helped with our junior program. So we're here again. We're a part of the community, going everything from the juniors, which are 6 and 7 year old children, right up to your 80 and 90-year-old seniors. And we want to stay part of the community, and obviously make sure that we've got a place and a house to stay in for as long as we possibly can. So I guess that's probably about it from me on my end.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tizard, for that. Questions or comments for Mr. Tizard? Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to thank Jason for coming out and representing the curling club and explaining the importance of the club to not only Stroud but Innisfil and in the community at large. So thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you. So Jason, if you heard what I said to the previous presenter, so your options are turn off your camera, go about your evening, or watch us on YouTube. The next presentation is actually going to be from staff on the facility. So you might, this facility master plan, so you might want to stay for that. And maybe some of what they present might help understand or formulate this a bit better. And also, I'm sure you heard that hopefully a motion will pass tonight to defer this for almost a month so that other groups can have input as well who may not have been aware of what we're doing tonight. So seeing no other hands, I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder, please, to receive the delegation. Thank you, Councillor Ices and Councillor Saunders. All those in favor? That is carried.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So next we have delegation of staff regarding the item that the two delegations were about so far, which is a report on tonight's agenda for facilities master plan and space analysis. And we invite staff, there's Carolina, to start whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Worship. So good evening, Your Worship, members of council, staff and the public. My name is Carolina Cotillo and I'm with the Capital Engineering Department. I'm the Capital Engineering Planning Associate and I was one of the staff members who worked on this facilities master plan. Joining me tonight will be Jessica Jenkins, Manager of Capital Engineering, Nikki Ballas, the Operations Manager for Facilities, and Nicole Bowman, the Director of Operations. And each of these people made a large contribution to making this plan of what it is today. If you can go on to the next slide, please. So this plan was originally thought of in 2017 as part of the 2017 capital budget. As you can see, it took a few years to get off the ground. It is the town's first ever facilities-oriented master planning exercise. And facilities in this context means buildings. So this is the first time that we have looked at buildings owned by the town that weren't captured in other master plans. So for example, our fire halls are captured in the fire master plan. Most of our libraries are captured in the library master plan, but that then leaves this whole group of other buildings that the town owns, which have not been captured elsewhere. Next, please. So for example, normally we would be having this meeting in town hall. That's included in this master plan. Also included are facilities like our operations center, our salt and sand storage facility that you see in the upper left of your picture here, the IRC, the Rosardo Health and Wellness Center, the Morgan Russell Arena. Next, please. The Stroud Arena as well, the Churchill Community Center, which is the former Churchill Courthouse, the Cookstown Community Center, and that is a facility similar to Stroud where we do share it with the library, 19 Queen Street in Cookstown, the Knock Community Center, which is the Knock Schoolhouse, and the Cookstown Theater. Next slide, please. I'll pass it on to Jessica Jenkins.
Apologies for the delay. Thank you, Carolina. I'm now going to provide a brief overview of the methodology used for the master plan. Collier's Project Leaders was retained to undertake the master plan study. The study involved providing guiding principles, public engagement through the town's Get Involved page, a virtual public open house, and soliciting feedback through a survey. Next slide, please. Additionally, 27 user groups were engaged during the study, and individual stakeholder meetings were held with 18 of these groups. Meetings were also held with internal stakeholders, town records were reviewed, and a financial analysis of expenses and revenues was completed for each facility. The information and feedback gathered was incorporated into the analysis for the master plan and used to inform the recommendations. Next slide, please. Additionally, notification was provided to the user groups following the publication of the final report to advise them that this was available for their information. From there, staff have continued dialogue with the user groups to facilitate discussion and answer any questions. Additionally, Roth IAMS were retained to undertake a space needs assessment for Town Hall and the Operations Center. This assignment included providing current layout diagrams and projected layouts to accommodate future growth for these facilities. This information was used to inform the main master plan study. I'll now pass it over to Nikki, who will provide an overview of the recommendations.
Thank you, Jessica. Next slide, please. Actually, I'll get you to skip one more. Thank you very much. So I'll start off with 19 Queen Street in Cookstown. So this building is currently being used for storage and meeting space by 2 of our nonprofit groups. Within the next 5 years, the town will need to invest $181,575 in repairs, with additional investments required after that. The master plan recommends disposition of the property or undertaking a review to determine best uses. Staff are supporting the recommendation for disposition. However, we do recognize the importance of working with the community partners that use this building, as they do valuable work for our community. A plan to sell this asset should be sensitive to the timing and other needs of these organizations as they access different space solutions. Next slide, please. I'll get you to jump one. Thank you. Cookstown Theatre. The theater was built in 1867 and is listed as a heritage building. The study recommends consideration to improvements that may bring the building closer to compliance with barrier-free standards. Next slide, please. Innisfil Recreation Complex. The Innisfil Recreation Complex is our largest facility of the 12 facilities within the scope of this plan. It is also the most complex and expensive to maintain and operate. The study recommends the development of a facility-specific asset management plan. Next slide, please. Stroud and Morgan Russell Arenas. The Stroud Recreation Center and Morgan Russell Arena, which is formerly known as Lefroy Arena, are older facilities with extensive use and increasing maintenance costs. There are extensive repairs and improvements needed for each of these arenas to keep them operational. The study suggests that the current facilities are no longer meeting the needs of our users. The recommendation is to undertake a business case for each facility to look at the feasibility of replacing each facility with the same uses, plus improvements that will meet the needs of our growth. Next slide, please. Facility recommendations for the 8 remaining facilities. These 8 remaining facilities would include Cookstown Community Center, Knock Community Center, the Churchill Community Center, Operations Center, Town Hall, and the Rizzardo Health and Wellness Center. The recommendation for these 8 facilities is to undertake the maintenance and capital expenditures as outlined in our building condition assessments. Next slide, please. Space assessment for Town Hall and the Operations Center. Through a third-party space assessment, it was determined that Town Hall can accommodate staff for the next 7 years with new workspace configuration. The Operations Center was determined that it cannot accommodate staff growth, even with a reconfiguration, and a facility extension is recommended. The Sand and Salt Dome is at capacity. Additional storage for equipment and working space for crews will be needed in the near future. And I will pass it off to Nicole Bowman.
The facilities master plan makes 4 policy recommendations. We could get the next slide, please. Perfect. A facilities asset management policy would likely recommend that we start keeping a large database of all the components of a facility in a software system. Each component would have an expected life cycle and a length of time it's expected to function, and a replacement cost. Year by year, the activities and costs of maintenance and replacements would be known. A policy on life cycle could direct staff to undertake a long-term analysis of the cost of developing and running a building. Life cycle costs include initial capital, annual operating revenues, replacement costs. Before a shovel even hits the ground, we would know what we're committing to. A policy could also direct funding practices to ensure that life cycle investments are made at the appropriate times to keep a building running efficiently. For environmental sustainability, the town's integrated sustainability master plan is presently underway, and building on that master plan can be a more specific policy on green standards that could be part of future building projects. Regarding accessibility, the town already complies with AODA requirements and takes the valuable advice of our Accessibility Advisory Committee, but there are new policies being published that set out more progressive universal design standards that could be considered for future building projects or retrofits. Next slide, please. There were a number of operational recommendations put forward. Generally, these were made to organize the work more effectively, integrate systems, track data, and measure customer satisfaction. Continuing on the topic of operational recommendations, there's one I would like to draw your attention to. The consultant did note that our operational costs, such as for materials and supplies, have increased year over year, but that our user fees have not been increasing by the same amount. They do recommend that the town undertake a review of user fees, as well as explore the role of grants and sponsorships to fund operational costs. Lastly, receiving the facilities master plan has no direct financial impacts. However, staff would be taking those recommendations and considering them along with other town priorities and bringing project proposals to council in the near future in budget deliberations. Specifically for 19 Queen, approval of the master plan and the report will direct staff to return to you with a plan for disposition that takes into account the needs of the current user groups and would present financial impacts. That brings us to the end of the presentation, but we're happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you to all of the presenters. Questions and comments from members of council? Councillor Waters?
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for all the presentations on the facilities master plan. I do have a few questions that I'd like to ask staff concerning the report. First of all, I'd like to say I like the priorities guidelines and the way it was done in a nice systematic manner. So it gave you a good list of where you should start. I especially liked the life cycle cost analysis. And I want to ask whether or not, is that just to assess the existing buildings and what we're going to do, or for new buildings and how we pay for them? Because I think that's the best way to assess buildings and new facilities is on a life cycle cost, because then the operating costs come into play when you're trying to choose that project. So along with life cycle costs, my question is, will you be changing procurement, which allows you to consider life cycle cost analysis, so you're not choosing the lowest bidder on every single project?
Director Bowman?
I can take the first half of that question. Through you, your worship, to Councillor Waters. Yes, life cycle costing, once we develop an effective life cycle costing policy and methodology to apply to buildings, would also be something that would apply not only to the existing structures, but to new structures. And ideally, in a perfect world, we would want to extend the same type of life cycle costing policy to other infrastructure. We certainly do, on a practical day-to-day basis, use concepts of life cycle costing in our infrastructure development. In my previous experience in roads, we did it a lot on the road side. But right now, we do not have a single unified policy that brings that together for all types of infrastructure. And that's something we would definitely look forward to building in the future.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Waters.
Thanks very much for that. I guess I'll ask the question again, is will you be changing the procurement policy that allows for proper life cycle costing? So like I said, we're not choosing the lowest cost for every project that we do.
So I'll leave it to some of the others to expand on that a little bit. But one thing that we can do even before we get to procurement is that life cycle costing can be built into design. So typically that's done by taking a look at the design stage at your different options for possible materials, for possible techniques to use, and then specifying that at the design stage. So it can be done through procurement, but can also be done at the design stage. And certainly it is something that, we'd like to be able to consider it when we get into the policy development at all stages, whether that's design, procurement, or any other stage of the process.
And I think the person who could most effectively answer your question, Councillor Waters, would be our procurement specialist, who I just flipped through my screen and I don't see Ms. Gallo on here tonight. Director Bowman, anything to add?
To second that comment. So we're happy to take that away as a follow-up, but don't have the exact answer for you right now.
Okay, thank you very much. And just one final question. Has there been any thought about considering the 3 sites at Town Hall? So Rosado Center, the Y, the town facilities, and combining with a potential RVH development across the road in terms of maybe seeing when that comes online to see whether or not there's any opportunity for shared utility operations in terms of combined heat and power, those types of things. So that if they're going to be building a brand new facility, is there any way that we might be able to partner with them? Because the Rosado Center by that time will be probably 15 years old. The Y is quite a bit older in town. So those systems might require an opportunity to change them out and combine them with a campus utility model.
Director Lee.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan, through to Councillor Waters. So as we've updated council previously this year, we were undertaking a town campus master plan that would factor in not only Town Hall, Rosardo, and the IRC, and we are incorporating that into the official plan review. So we're mindful of both the growth within our facility, but then the RVH South Campus across the road and looking at those synergies. So that will come forward as part of the official plan review exercise that'll be undertaken later this year.
Thank you.
Councillor Drodge, did I see your hand?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. This is actually a question specifically for 19 Queen Street. So if we were to go ahead and spend the 181,000 over the next 5 years to make that building up to snuff, would that increase the overall value of the property? Like, would we be able to, if we ever did divest it in the future, would we get a return on that money?
Director Bowman?
Councillor George, I think that would be a difficult question for staff to assess at this point. We would need to engage some external help. Generally, when you input into a building, it can improve its long term, but there are other factors that would likely be at play, including its location and property size and other pieces.
Right, thanks. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you could answer it or not. Just curious if, if it was just we're wasting 181,000, or if we'd actually, get something back on our investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments for any of the presenters? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. One last item I wanted to mention, the salt dome. Has there been any thought about, since it's about 50,000 square feet, half of that, I've taken a look at the roof in terms of about half of that 25,000 square feet does have an opportunity for a huge solar system on that. That solar system would bring in about $70,000 a year in terms of energy. And whether or not, I know the FIT program is gone, but is there an opportunity to reduce operating costs of that facility by using the roof to install a solar system that could do that? So just throwing that in there as an opportunity to revenue generation, but make more use of that facility in terms of the roof that it has available to it.
Thank you, Director Bowman.
Through you to Councillor Waters, it is something we are hoping to look at through some of the work we're already engaged in, not necessarily through this master plan, but a separate facility sustainability review. It has been a past conversation, and I'm certainly interested to talk to you more about it. But yes, hopefully in future we'll be able to bring you further information from that study.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other hands? Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Your Worship. Maybe just following up on some of the comments made on 19 Queen Street. Just curious if any other analysis as to potential uses for that facility were done town-wide, other than some of the uses that Ms. Bolkin spoke about. Like the DMZ is, I remember them being short on office space for economic development, and some other initiatives like that. Just curious if they had been considered, or if there could be a little bit more investigation into some of those possible uses.
Director Bowman.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Ices, thank you for the comment. And yes, we do continue to have internal needs, and they are routinely, put against opportunities we have within the facilities portfolio. This building usually falls short of those needs. It's fairly small. It has limited accessibility. It has virtually no parking aside from the on-street parking that's available. So some of those factors certainly constrain the possible the highest and best uses for that building. Generally, it's looked at as that sort of office space type of use for a small business. So you could imagine sort of an attorney's office. type of use with low parking demands that could be just met with on-street parking. So internally, we've not seen an opportunity to use that facility for a different need. And looking at it externally, that's the type of use that the current facility and property would be most conducive for.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Richardson.
Just a quick question. Just if 19 Queen Street is taken down, do we have another space that we can offer to Christmas for Kids and to utilize so that they are not out on the streets or out on the sidewalk, as she said?
Director Bowman.
Thank you for that question through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Richardson. Yes, and staff are sincerely trying to convey our support for these organizations. We have been in touch with them as this has gone through, as the study concluded, and very recently, within the past couple of weeks. So we commit to continue to work with them. We understand that there's sort of two types of need. One is for the storage, and we understand the constraints that a lot of our community groups feel with that. Storage understandably is a need of their business. The other piece is the meeting space. So, creating safe, welcoming spaces for community groups to come together for recreation or for meeting the needs of the community. We have an opportunity within our community space within the Cookstown Library and Community Center building. So there are some great places we can offer for that side of their needs. The storage is a different issue. And unfortunately, one that town staff struggle with themselves. Just finding storage for our own equipment is becoming a challenge, as you've seen with our space review. But we are looking forward to thinking creatively, to working with those organizations to sort of how we can help support both of those issues, and would certainly be engaging with Councillor Drost as well, being the ward councillor involved with those community groups. So you have our commitment to keep working actively on the issue.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? I had a couple, if I could. So first of all, I want to really commend staff for this forward-looking, even if it's scary, even if those numbers in the millions are scary, in 8 and 10 years. I think it's so important that we're eyes wide open and that we see down the road and anticipate for it and plan for it. I'll use a couple of examples close to home recently. So the Beaton Arena in New Tecumseh didn't open this year because the structural engineer found out that the girders were bent and they had to close their arena this winter. Just a few days ago, the inflatable soccer dome building in Bradford blew down and has been down for a week or so for repair. And it's those kind of things when it goes down without any notice. If we can do these reviews and these facility reviews and stay on top of things so that we don't end up with that surprise at the last minute, I think we're doing our due diligence for our community and for the corporation. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Cookstown Community Center because, and I'm not in there a lot, but when I am in there, it does seem a little bit underutilized. And I'm wondering, it's recently, I believe the responsibility of it has moved from the library to the town. And what difference does that make for the users of that space? Director Bowman, you talked about having meetings there, but my understanding is the cost of those meetings might make it not affordable.
Well, thank you for that question, Mayor Dolan. And I may call upon Tammy Botham, who's also joined us on the call today. But yes, there are complications at times, especially after when the library hours are closed, because we do need a facility monitor to be in that space in order to open doors, turn on lights, operate equipment as necessary, and close up shop when a user group leaves. But there are times when this is more feasible. So when the library is open, we think that there are ways to have community groups such as the chamber, for example, come in and be able to use that space. We share in your desire to see it utilized well, and are looking to work with our partners at the library, as well as, you know, careful managing of our own budget and resources in order to get those folks who want to be there into those spaces. Does that answer your question?
It certainly does. And I'm also similar for the Churchill Community Center, because for years it's been a courthouse, or considered a courthouse part of the time. And I wondered, now that it's not, I understand it's no longer a courthouse, and how we're transitioning to getting a use back out of that space. Thank you, Director Bowman.
We're also working on the programming planning for that facility as well. So it is a space that is being programmed, and it is used by certain groups. I know our Innisfil Garden Club runs their meetings and operations through that space, and are regularly hosting events. So we're going to continue to program it, and just like Cookstown, looking to work with partners that need to use it.
Thank you. And as far as operations go, and you're going to anticipate this from me, Nicole, because it's one of my pet peeves. Well, two actually. One is, I know that the police, they hire a separate contractor to plow their driveway than the rest of the campus. And I just wonder if we routinely have discussions about how to share services like that, so that, you know, everybody's getting the efficiency of like one plow versus one plow for the parking lot at Empower, one plow for the parking lot at police services, and so on. And then my next one, which you'll anticipate, is the salt. So last week, I went into town hall through the front door, and it was actually the salt made it more dangerous. The salt was slippery because you had to walk on an inch of salt to get into it. And forget the cost, it's just also the environmental impact it has, particularly on like Simcoe with sodium levels rising. We have Smart About Salt certified people who, and I know it's a balance, because I know the last time I complained about this, a staff person slipped and fell in the parking lot the next day. So I know it's a balance. You've got to have enough, but not too much. But I've noticed in front of 19 Queen, which is beside me, again, the salt has eaten all the concrete on the front of the building away too. Again, I find it's a little bit heavily used there. So you know my issue with salt, so I don't have to go on anymore.
Oh, Your Worship, thank you for continuing to call out about salt, because staff do share your concern about this. And my phone is actually packed full of pictures that I've been taking with examples of the over application of salt. And those have been in turn used to go back to our contractor through the procurement process to flag the issue and make that known. And it's a bit of vendor management on our part. But actively working with procurement to deal with those misapplications. And they have been through Smart About Salt training. And I suspect it's somewhat, as you say, to their own liabilities around too much versus too little. But I do believe they can do better. And you can be assured that if our manager of Parks and Community Spaces, Chris Trevisan, is listening, he has had many conversations with them and will continue to do so. Regarding shared services, this is another issue for us that we have been dealing with. Putting too many shared groups and too many small parking lots in one contract becomes a problem, because there's not enough providers with that much equipment and resources and people to get them all done inside of the service times that we need. So there's this sweet spot where we actually can't put too many in, or we don't get the service. All of us don't get the service we need. So we found that place a while ago and had to actually make it a little bit smaller. But we do recognize the idea of getting efficient and sharing services with our town campus partners, especially wherever possible. So you have our commitment that we're wherever possible making that happen.
Thank you so much. And then one final comment, and then I will end. So I'm listening very carefully to some of our not-for-profit groups tonight, and I'm cognizant of wanting to treat them all equally the same, and at the same time think about what other municipalities do with their not-for-profit groups. Like, does the city of Barrie provide the space for the food bank or Christmas cheer or any of the, like, who pays for that space? Does the charity pay for it, or does the town offer them free space to offer these services? Or the city, I should say.
We did a little bit of review on that today as well, just to double check our facts. And from what we can tell, all of our neighbors, where they will provide space for meetings and facilities, it is at a cost. We're not aware of a system where it's offered without. Is that what you're asking about?
I think so. I see where the Innisfil Historical Society has use of Knox School. I don't know if they pay for that or not. I know the Innisfil Garden Club pays for the Churchill Hall, but they do it through a grant that they get from council. The theater folks at South Simcoe Theater have a lease with the theater. I don't know whether they pay for that or not. But then there's other groups, like I know Rotary pays to go in the Hordinsky kitchen to make meals to put in the Troy Scott fridge. So I want to be fair to everybody. I want to make sure that we they're all noble causes and they're all volunteers and they're all doing everything that they can for the betterment of our community. I just can't imagine what Innisfil would be like without the curling clubs and without the Christmas for Kids and without the South Simcoe Theater and the Historical Society. But I just want to make sure in this gasp of things, like, can we do one rate for not-for-profit? I mean, I was speaking to the lady from Contact Community Services today, the executive director. She told me they're giving up their office space in Alliston because they're getting a 40% increase in their rent. I know that there's a new community hub in Bradford for social services, but I know that the town of Bradford is charging rent to each of those social services to use that space. So I want to know the expectations of our groups, if it's our responsibility to provide them space to do their work, or is it our responsibility to help support them where we can and help them find funding to get the space that they need. We could also, I think, send out something. There could be, I don't know, a Temple Plastics or somebody in the industrial lands over there that's got a ton of space that they don't use and would be happy to use it for charity. So I'm just kind of downloading my brain. So I apologize for all of that. Any final comments from Nicole, Tammy?
Yes, if I could, Your Worship. I think you're onto something there. The best solutions come when multiple players can support the mission. So whether it's a community partner, like you say, with Tempo as an example, through grants, through resources that we may be able to provide or provide at a cost. But to your point, I think we need to be cognizant of what, the difference between a not-for-profit and a for-profit enterprise might be able to support. And so if I could just invite Tammy Bothman to speak, she's actually working on this topic right now.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan, and welcome. Thank you, Council. I am working on the meeting rooms locations and what we can provide. So as Council probably is aware, in our current hall policy, nonprofit groups or groups servicing Innisfil, so Barrie groups, contact services, those types ones that are servicing Innisfil are at this time permitted one meeting, 3-hour meeting a month, currently in our hall policy. I have been doing research, Mayor Dolan, on the similar question you just asked, as far as what are other municipalities doing. There's a broad range of things that are happening, from grant opportunities for these social service groups, but we're looking at more of As you mentioned, we have spaces that have unutilized spaces. We want to work with our social services groups and our groups servicing the community, whether that's through health and wellness or whatever. So we are doing research, and I'm looking at bringing to council in the near future community group affiliation agreement or policy, sorry. And that policy will hopefully narrow that gap that we're seeing for these community groups that service our community but can't afford potentially our nonprofit rate that's currently in our fees and charges. So a few years ago, we did introduce a nonprofit rate because, again, we were hearing from these service groups that they couldn't afford our regular meeting rate for profit that was set. So we do have the nonprofit rate. We do have the free current 3-hour meeting rate a month. I am looking at some additional opportunities for these service groups or the groups that are servicing out of Barrie. So I'm hoping that will narrow that gap and bring a better opportunity to these nonprofit groups, and also utilize our space that's, sometimes they're sitting empty that are currently staffed. We're hoping to be able to bring them into this opportunity. Like Christmas for Kids did mention, we're able to give them 10 days around Christmas for their packing of their packages and pickups of their packages. Some of those other nonprofit groups that you did speak of, the theater, the historical society, our seniors club, they do have agreements and lease agreements, and they all are paying for the utilizing of the space. So we're trying to find something that fits for these groups that may not have grant opportunities and don't have the funding to rent an hour to meet with a client or so forth. So that will be coming to council in the near future.
Oh, that's wonderful. Councilor Richardson.
Sorry, just a quick question to that. Just wondering if these groups are also being encouraged to reach out to some of the other nonprofit groups, so to speak, like the Legion has a hall, the Lions have a hall, Guildford Hall. There's quite a few other spaces that they could be utilizing for their meetings and stuff that are options as well. That's all.
Thank you, Councilor Richardson. Yeah, I think there's a lot of good conversations going on here. So with that, I don't see any more hands. So I'll ask for a mover and a seconder that the delegation regarding item C1 be received. Deputy Mayor Fowler and Councilor Drodge, all those in favor? That is carried. And now with council's concurrence, I'd like to ask for if we could please do a little bit of procedural gymnastics and put item C1 forward, which is the recommendation regarding this topic that we've been on for the last hour. Is that okay with everyone if we move that forward? Okay, that's great. Thank you. Councillor Drodge.
Thank you, Your Worship. So yeah, I was going to ask if we could move that forward, and I was also going to ask if I can make a motion to defer this to the March 27th council meeting so that the public can have more engagement, and maybe we can sit down with some of these not-for-profits and have a one-on-one meeting and strategize.
Thank you. And a seconder was
Councillor Constantine.
Councillor Constantine, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion to defer. Any debate on the motion to defer? I just want to put a bit of context behind it. So you've got a lot of groups that maybe aren't aware, that maybe they don't use it that often. So maybe they weren't consulted with, and be nice if after, I'm sure there'll be something in the paper about it, and then people that will generate some conversation around the town about facilities, because these facilities, as we know, when we did our open house at the Stroud recreation facilities, these facilities, some of them have a lot of memories and emotions attached to them. So we want to make sure everybody's engaged. Because of the way our procedural bylaw works, we actually receive, debate, and approve items in one meeting. Most councils don't. Most councils receive and debate one and then confirm with their council, with a council meeting 2 weeks from now. So whenever we have an item that we think is going to garner a lot of public interest, The best bet is always to defer it if it's not time sensitive, to allow that sober second thought and people to engage and input on the item. That would mean it should be the 13th of March. The 13th of March is our next meeting, but that happens to be in the middle of March break, and many of our staff with young people, and I'm sure many of our stakeholders are also planning to be away. So that's why we chose March the 27th. So any other comments or questions about the deferral? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So now we'll go on to our next delegations, which is a delegation from John Stilic. And John wants to give us a delegation on the Orbit secondary plan. Mr. Stilic, if you're with us, please turn on your video and your audio, and we look forward to you. You have 10 minutes, sir.
Good evening, Mayor Dolan and members of council. Thank you for letting me speak to you today or this evening. I do think that a lot of the work that's been done with the Orbit secondary plan is really good. Lots of good stuff done. But I do have a concern about TOC3 lands. And I guess the bottom line for me is that I hope that you can approve the provincial zoning order lands, TOC 1 and 2, but defer TOC 3. The only reason is, as I'm going to explain to you, I see that for TOC 3, the plan is for about 65,000 residents and 15,000 jobs on about 5.2 kilometers, square kilometers. But a lot of that land is reserved for natural heritage space and natural open space and other kinds of open space, so that the buildable area is a lot less than that. It seems to be about 3.2 square kilometers. So putting 65,000 people on 3.2 square kilometers, that's 20,000 people per square kilometer. That is a lot. If you can look at Central Alcona, I went to Google Earth, and through their polygon feature, I measured out 3.8 square kilometers of land there, and identified that the population, the residential density is about 2,300 people per square kilometer. Now, the TOC3 lands with the 65,000 is going to be, and if you can visualize this, 9 times the density of that Central Alcona area. That's a lot. I did a comparison to another, to the old city of Toronto, excluding Scarborough, North York, and Etobicoke. It's 3.2 times the density of the old city of Toronto. That's a lot of density. And what's going to happen is that everybody's going to have to be in apartment buildings. I mean, the secondary plan does have a provision for townhouses stacked and back to back and so forth. But that's only going to be few and far between. People are going to be stacked up in row upon row of apartment buildings. And I think that if you're building a livable space, a real community, that needs to change. The balance is way off. And I think I've written to you about that in the past, Mayor Dolan, and I think to Andrea Lee as well. So, 95% of residents are going to be in apartment towers, and they're not going to have personal outside space other than a balcony. Children and pets will not have a secure, parent-supervised open space to play in. Sunday barbecues won't be possible. No private garages. They'll all be in basements. And the open space around the apartment buildings is going to be a no man's land, and it doesn't really belong to anybody but everybody in general. So there's really no sense of ownership of those lands. And it'll just be kind of a buffer between buildings. And that really, I mean, you could it's pretty if you want, but it's not really going to be that practical for day-to-day use of all those people. I think the orbit needs to have much higher densities than what we have in central Alcona, but not that much. It's, you know, environmental sustainability is necessary, but, you know, that alone doesn't justify that kind of density, 20,000 per square kilometer. That's a lot of density. I have suggested a couple of times that density be cut in half, and that you have a lot more ground-oriented homes with private yards mixed into it, 50-50, something along that. I did do something a while ago with an organization I was with, the Sustainable Urban Development Association, that kind of showed what it was intended to be an example of sustainable high-density greenfield development on the fringe of an urban area, and it came out to about 10,000 residents per square kilometer, which is a lot, but it's livable. It's energy efficient, land efficient, transportation efficient. Overall, about 4.3 times as dense as the central Alcona lands. And if you can visualize what 4.3 times is, the central Alcona lands that I measured was north and south of Venice Beach Road, the distance from the railroad tracks to St. John's Road and 25th Side. So it's that kind of area. And if you can visualize 4.3 times roughly that kind of density. There is a slide, maybe it can be shown, if somebody can put that slide up, of a partial view of the kind of thing I'm talking about. Yeah, that view is what we came up with. It's just one example, and it's not the be all end all, but it shows you that something different can be done that's more livable, more friendly. It's not complete, it doesn't have some of the apartment buildings that are necessary, and some of the larger acreage of land of open space, and so on and so forth. There's stormwater management area and so on and so forth. But even so, it's just an example. It basically shows a very pedestrian-oriented environment, like you're trying to do with the secondary plan. You can see rows of attached homes of various designs, various sizes, and so forth, fronting on what's called a pedway, which is just simply a walkable, sellable corridor for your automobile, but wide enough for urgent vehicles. Mixed use in that sense, 900 square feet homes, 3,000 square feet homes, all together, plus access to non-residential spaces. If you look at the right-hand side of it, some non-residential services, shops and cafes, and so on and so forth. I think what you get in that kind of community is that there fosters casual contacts. You get to know your neighbors. Neighbors become friends. There's a better sense of personal ownership and care of the neighborhood and of the environment. If you can see, similar to the new urbanist model, garages in the back, fronting on an alleyway, a little way that takes goes to the main road, to and from the main road. That sort of thing. It's only a partial view, but the provincial zoning order does not really include TOC3 lands. It's really just the 425 meters or TOC1, TOC2 lands. So my request is to you that, sure, go ahead and approve the Ministry zoning order lands, but hold off on TOC3 lands, please. See what you can do about making it more livable, more down to earth, more neighborly, more ground oriented, with spaces that I think would work better for the community. Yeah, I know our staff spent month and month on this, and I guess maybe a couple of years. But I really don't see the reason why 65,000 is necessary for TOC lands, and that the lands can be better designed, better shaped for a better community. So that is my request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stilic, very much. So questions or comments for Mr. Stilic? I'm not seeing any cards, am I? We'll ask you, Mr. Stilic, the same, if you welcome to stay with us with your camera off and muted if you want to listen to the next presentation, which is about the orbit, and then we're going to be debating that later on in the agenda, or you can watch us on live stream, or you can go about your evening, whatever you would like to do.
Yeah, I'll stick around and watch. My dinner is ready, so I'll bring that along, and I'll just stick with you.
Oh, that smells good. I wish I could have some. Whoops.
Yeah, it is good.
All right, can I have a
Thank
mover
you.
and a seconder, please? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Richardson and seconded by Councillor Constantine. All those in favor? That is carried. And I think we have one final delegation this evening, and it is David Sajecki, a consultant from Sajecki Planning, and it's regarding the Orbit Secondary Plan. And Mr. Sajecki, I hope I said your name properly.
You did, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Dolan and members of council. As just mentioned, my name is David Sajecki from Sajecki Planning, and we were part of the consultant team along with Weston Williamson and Partners and Hatch, who were developing the Orbit Secondary Plan. I'm very excited to present the secondary plan tonight. By sustainably focusing growth, council and staff have provided direction to develop a plan that protects Innisfil's agricultural and natural heritage and Lake Simcoe. There's a saying in planning circles that some places have no there. That's not the case here. Orbit builds upon a beautiful setting with views of Lake Simcoe, significant woodlands, and heritage buildings and landscapes. In developing the plan, we've tried to build upon and incorporate each of the elements, and we have an opportunity to create a special there. Next slide, please. I think just one up, actually, please. Oh, it's okay. It's not showing up, but it's just the agenda. So tonight, what I'll be speaking to is what is the Orbit Plan and what does it include? I'll provide a brief overview of where we are in the process, discuss what Orbit is trying to achieve, and at a very high level, lay out the elements for how we get there. So next slide, please. And this image identifies the Orbit Secondary Plan area within the context of Innisfil and Lake Simcoe. The secondary plan area itself is the blue area on this image. It's centered around the proposed Innisfil GO station on the Barrie GO line, which is intended to be located near the intersection of 6th Line and the rail corridor. And this new station will provide direct regional access to Barrie, as well as the Greater Toronto Area. Next slide, please. As mentioned, a minister's zoning order was issued on August 6, 2021 for lands within Orbit referred to as Transit-Oriented Community 1 and Transit-Oriented Community 2. These lands are centered on the proposed Innisfil GO station. Section 47 of the Planning Act permits the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to issue a ministerial zoning order that regulates the use of land, buildings, and structures. Transit-Oriented Community 1, which is identified on this image by the yellow circle, includes the lands within a 225-meter radius of the intersection of 6th Line and the rail corridor. It permits a minimum density of 200 dwelling units per hectare, minimum building heights of 6 stories, and maximum building heights of 40 stories. Transit-Oriented Community 2 is identified in blue, and it includes the lands within a 225 meter to 425 meter radius from the intersection of 6th Line and the rail corridor. It permits a minimum density of 150 dwelling units per hectare, minimum building heights of 4 stories, and maximum building heights of 15 stories. However, for a portion of transit-oriented community 2 that is along 6th Line, it permits maximum heights up to 25 stories. This ministerial zoning order was issued in advance of the secondary plan, and the secondary plan is required to be consistent with it. It identifies that the ministerial zoning order prevails where secondary plan policies conflict with these area-specific regulations. So next slide, please. This image identifies the secondary plan area in its entirety, so orbit in its entirety. That includes the area that is outlined in red. It is generally bound by 5th Line and Bel Air Beach Road to the south. There's a boundary that is 300 meters west of 20th Side Road to the west. The border to the north is 7th Line in the railway corridor. And to the east, it's a series of existing and proposed communities. Within the eastern portion of the secondary plan area, it includes the Sleeping Lion development, as well as a mostly natural area in the southeast area of the secondary plan, and that's bound by 6th Line, St. John's Road, and Maple Road. You'll notice on this image, the transit-oriented community 1 is identified in sort of a pink color, whereas transit-oriented community 2 is identified in a green color. It also includes a yellow boundary, and that yellow boundary identifies the protected major transit station area that was included in the County of Simcoe's Municipal Comprehensive Review, and more specifically, County Official Plan Amendment number 7. And that also includes within that protected major transit station area, the Sleeping Lion development. You can make out an area that is identified by a hatch. And so that identifies the settlement area that has been, that is being approved through the Municipal Comprehensive Review. That means that 2051 development can occur within transit-oriented community 1 and 2, as well as a Sleeping Lion development. The remaining lands within this area are called transit-oriented community 3. Those lands will need to be included in the Alcona settlement area prior to any development taking place. The timeline for that is indeterminate, and until that time, these lands will continue to be designated rural, agricultural, and greenlands. So next slide, please. The plan, as I'm sure council is aware, has been years in the making. Partisans prepared a conceptual design that was approved by council on July 15th, 2020. The secondary plan is very much influenced by Partisans' initial concepts. Based off of those concepts, a series of discussion papers were prepared that covered the themes of achieving a sense of place, 15-minute neighborhoods, higher quality density, sustainable community, and an insightful city. A series of strategic big move strategy and concepts of what we wanted to achieve were developed based off of these discussion papers, as well as based off of a significant amount of consultation. These led to the schedules and policies within the secondary plan, as well as a concept development that is a way to test those policies through a 3-dimensional model. And you can see in the box on the right-hand side of this image covers the key policy areas within the secondary plan. And this is essentially the framework for how we get where we want to go. The next slide, please. This is the timeline of the secondary plan itself. So the project started far before with the Partisans concept as well as the ministerial zoning order. But the secondary plan and the Orbit potential innovation plan commenced in March 2022. Between April and August of 2022, there was a series of community engagement events. A preliminary preferred solution was selected, or concept was selected in September 2022, with a series of other consultation events to inform that occurring during the fall and winter of 2022. And this plan was further refined and developed into secondary plan policies throughout 2023. So next slide, please. This slide is an image of what Orbit is trying to achieve. It's just a visualization of one way that Orbit can be built out. It's guided, consistent with the Partisans concept, it's guided by the Garden City movement. And so this is to produce relatively economic independent places with short commute times to surrounding areas, as well as protecting the preservation of the countryside. Approximately 50% of the lands within Orbit will be parks, open space, or natural heritage. Green corridors that you can see in this image will connect neighborhoods together, and along these routes, they will be complemented by services, retail, and restaurants. The highest densities will be located near the GO station, and they will transition down in density as you move further out from the 6th line and railway corridor intersection. The plan itself reflects a population of approximately consistent with the minimum density within the county's municipal comprehensive review, a population of approximately 25,000 people and 5,000 jobs to 2051. That would be all within TOC1 and TOC2 and Sleeping Lion. Extending out to 2091, that's the very general timeline for full build out. We'd be looking at approximately a total population of 90,000 people and 20,000 jobs. It's a lot of people, but this is to occur over many decades. Next slide, please. A vision for Orbit was adopted by Council in 2019. I won't read the full vision statement, but key themes include a community where small town and rural lifestyles coexist with the benefits and attributes of urban living. The public realm, meaning public spaces, are at the forefront of this vision, and the vision for Orbit is to appeal to a variety of lifestyle activities, all-season experience, and easy access to the city. Next slide, please. 5 guiding principles were developed to provide direction to the secondary plan. These are focused around sustainability, streets and blocks, land uses in built form, public and private spaces, and mobility. The first principle, sustainability. There are plenty of definitions for sustainability, but the most common is from the United Nations Brundtland Commission in 1987, which defines it as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. There's also a concept called the triple bottom line, which looks at sustainability from the lens of social, environmental, and economic criteria. For Orbit, we've extended this definition to include principles related to sustainable energy practices and digital innovation. At Council's direction, key to the sustainability principles are to protect, improve, or restore elements that contribute to the ecological health of the Lake Simcoe watershed, and to explore alternative energy solutions in district energy systems. Streets and blocks form a community's fabric, and they set the tone for its built environment. As part of Orbit, one of our principles is to develop compact blocks with a focus on public spaces and walkability. Land uses in built form will support diversity, flexibility, connectedness, and resilience. Public and private spaces are meant to promote seamless integration that foster a sense of identity through placemaking and high-quality design. And finally, mobility is centered on the GO station, but mobility throughout Orbit is to support all modes of transportation, including cars, and it will connect together neighborhoods through high-quality infrastructure, cycling and pedestrian paths, and complementary land uses in open space. Next slide, please. This is an image. It's a view from the proposed GO station. It's very much a conceptual rendering, but it illustrates what the public plaza and the buildings near the GO station, the built form of Orbit in the most dense areas could look like. This is again the heart of Orbit. Next slide, please. A series of 4 key directions were prepared to guide the secondary plan. The first is a concentric grid of streets and developments that will orbit out from the GO station in a concentric pattern. However, collectors and arterials still provide a grid pattern and structure for efficient movement throughout Orbit. 15-minute neighborhoods. This is a concept not in any intention related to restricting movement, but it's around ensuring that there are 4 neighborhoods that provide all the services that people need, from neighborhood amenities, commercial amenities, healthcare, schools within walkable neighborhoods. There are 4 that are proposed within Orbit. Each will be a precinct with a distinctive character, parks and placemaking opportunities, but each will be well connected to each other, Innisfil as a whole, Simcoe County, Barrie, and the GTA. The heart of Orbit is the GO Station. The proposed GO Station Transit Plaza will serve as that heart, and it will provide a focal point and a hub of activity. Green corridors will serve as a spine, connecting neighborhoods throughout Orbit to the proposed GO Station as well as to each other. And this green infrastructure, these green corridors, will be framed by a mix of uses with what we call active frontages, so commercial uses, neighborhood uses, community services, as well as arteries with strong public places, strong urban design, and placemaking opportunities. Next slide, please. This image just identifies the 4 precincts or 15-minute neighborhoods within Orbit. The heart of it, there's the station hub in purple, and then there is the northwest precinct in green, the southwest precinct in blue, and the southeast precinct in the orange color. Each of them have their own dedicated priorities and policies and very much their own characters, but they are all connected together. Next slide, please. This is an image throughout the secondary plan. It goes into detail around specific policies for each precincts. As mentioned, they each have their own character, each have their own considerations in terms of transition and height and built form. Primary and secondary nodes that are identified by the blue and the orange circles are areas that are meant to be cultural centers. They're locations for community and commercial facilities, and they've been considered very much in terms of transportation and land uses and connectivity. And they're intended to meet the daily and weekly needs of residents and act as the heart of each of these precincts. Next slide, please. This slide starts to lay out, and I believe Andrea may be speaking to part of this as well too, but the policies that are included within the secondary plan. The secondary plan is based on 5 chapters. So it's an introduction, a vision, goals, and guiding principles, an overview of what development can look like upon implementation of these policies and schedules. And then within the policies and directions that are provided, it focuses on sustainability and resiliency, streets and blocks, land uses and built form, precincts, public realm, housing, including affordable housing, community services and facilities, mobility, parking and loading, cultural heritage, and the required infrastructure, both hard and soft, to support all of this growth. And then the final chapters around implementation and phasing. The next slide, please, identifies the land uses that are permitted that are designated, I should say, within Orbit. The area in purple is the major transit station mixed use area. This is the area that will have the highest intensity and diversity of uses. The neighborhood commercial area, which is identified well, it's supposed to be identified in red. It's more of a burgundy color on this image. That is where it permits the commercial uses meant to service the local community and forms those primary and secondary nodes. The residential designations range from high density to low density. And then there are a series of designations for community spaces, employment areas, parks and open space, and natural heritage. A whole series of other schedules have been developed as well that provide direction around the road network, building heights, densities, active transportation, transit, cultural heritage, phasing, and open spaces and natural heritage. And the sort of one of the final slides I have is the next slide, and it speaks to phasing. It identifies to 2031 that there will be an additional 9,400 people that are planned and 1,800 jobs to this time. And this extends out to 2051 with an additional 17,000 people and 3,000 jobs for a total of 25,000 and 5,000 to that time. And then beyond it is when the remainder of the lands, TOC 3, but there could be further intensification within TOC 1 and 2 as well, would occur. It's very dependent upon a number of capital works that would need to be provided to support this growth. So that includes transit, improved trail cycling paths and walking paths, improvements to the road network. The servicing needs to be in place around water and stormwater, and that is being worked through the master servicing plan update, and improvements to the public realm, including the transit plaza, green corridors, and parks and open spaces. Section 16 of the secondary plan speaks to implementation, and it goes through everything from interpretation and phasing to required zoning changes, conveyance of land, landowner agreements, future studies and monitoring. And the next slide is, I'll finish on a visualization, again, of one way that Orbit can be built out. Admittedly, it's a big change, but it's a change that will happen over many decades. It's a more sustainable way to grow than much of what we've seen in our region over the past many decades. It's an important move, and this is perhaps a bit of a tongue-in-cheek way to finish. But to paraphrase Stan Lee's Spider-Man, he used to say that with great power comes great responsibility. And I think that can be extended to with great growth comes great responsibility. And I believe this is a great step in that direction. So thank you. Next slide, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sajecki. Very, very good. Are we going to comments and questions now, or did Director Lee want to comment?
No, Mayor Dolan, I think we can go to questions at this point, and I'll help Mr. Sajecki in terms of responses.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Fowler.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. In the report, there's many references to the projected major station transit area. I can see it near the GO station and the Orbit in that sense, but when it extends up to 7th line, what are you looking at in that section of area? It's because it's outlined in yellow. What's the purpose? How would it support the Orbit?
So that was actually determined through the municipal comprehensive review. Actually, you know what? Perhaps I'll turn this over to Andrea. That may be a better question for town staff.
Director Lee?
Yes, thank you. So Mr. Sajecki is correct. That was actually identified through the county's MCR, Municipal Comprehensive Review process, as the entire area, which is TOC 1, TOC 2 lands. It did extend up into an area that was also identified as a development. It is subject to a current draft plan of subdivision. So I did note within the staff report specifically references to, there are policies in the provincial policy about protected major transit station areas. And it's promotional policies in terms of encouraging transit-oriented communities and certain permissions that are provided. So the recognition of that area in yellow, as was identified on, I think it was slide 5 in David's presentation, is really to recognize those permissions through the provincial policies.
Follow up for me? Okay, in this regard, then, you're stating that it has the potential to be used for transit purposes under OP number 7, I believe it is, but it is not designated to be used currently, as they're looking at extending a subdivision into that area. Am I correct in that understanding?
Perhaps we could, Kevin, go back to, I think it is slide 5, just so I have the map. That one there, thank you. So Deputy Mayor, you can see on that slide, the area that's sort of outlined in yellow is that protected major transit station area. all us planners love short forms. So I did use the short forms in the report as well, but essentially that's the area. So the yellow circular areas, obviously those TOC 1 and TOC 2 lands. But we do see that sort of rectangular shape sort of north of the label Webster Boulevard. And that is the area of what was an existing draft plan, a subdivision that has not been developed, that could then have permissions for increased density, because that's what that protected major transit station area identifies as a higher density transit-oriented community. So because it is focused on the GO line and the GO station, those provincial policies encourage higher density in those areas.
Yeah, if I could perhaps build on that just a little bit further as well too. It's identified within the Planning Act policies around protected major transit station areas. It identifies one of the considerations within them is that appeal rights are limited, and it works its way down through the growth plan, which identifies that for in this case, the ministerial zoning order for transit-oriented community 1 and 2 would supersede it. But within the growth plan, it identifies a minimum density for a protected major transit station area with GO Transit service of 150 people and jobs per hectare.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The reason I'm asking is, and I believe I understand what you're explaining, because we had the circular talk 1, talk 2, and then we had this portion up in the northern section, and I was wondering if that was going to be something like it was going to be a bus station that was going to be for potential future transit use, or is it something that was related to the GO station itself? But it's mostly about density in proximity to the GO station.
Correct. It would not be necessarily for a transit facility, but transit-oriented community development.
Got it. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Councillor Constantine.
I just want to know, when are we going to see shovels in the ground?
Who wants to answer that one?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. I'll take that question. Certainly, we're continuing to try and progress with the developer on the GO station design. They are continuing to work with Metrolinx on that. While there are shovels that have been in the ground on their sales office, which they do hope to open later this spring when the weather cooperates to allow them to finish that. This area, we're still trying to work through finalizing the site plans. We're anticipating that'll be later this spring, summertime, and then that would allow work to start after that. So hopefully this year, but I've learned not to make full commitments on that timing at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks very much for that presentation. I think it presents a slightly different view than Mr. Stilich's view of high density and all concrete and no green space. So thanks for that. I do want to ask, my first question is, the secondary plan, realistically, does it have any influence on talk 1 and talk 2? And if not, this secondary plan really controls development in talk 3 after 2051, which means I'll be dead. So just curious, is that a good understanding? Thank you.
Mr. Sajecki or Director Lee?
So I can jump in. So Councillor Waters, essentially the secondary plan and the staff report, and David spoke to it as well tonight. The secondary plan focuses on TOC 1, TOC 2, and TOC 3. So it's the entire red area that we're still seeing on the screen, which is all 3 areas. What the secondary plan does, though, is recognize the MZO permissions that are in place for the TOC 1 and TOC 2 lands within those sort of pink and blue areas that you also see on the screen, and recognizes the permissions that are within that minister's zoning order for within the 225 radius, the 250 density, and then within the 425, the 150 density and those height requirements that David spoke to on the other slide. So those permissions have all been incorporated into the secondary plan. And then the other policies would then apply to the balance of the TOC3 lands in terms of the entire vision orbit vision that we've been looking to achieve, and those fundamental principles that David was talking about, and the directions that we've been trying to achieve that would apply to TOC 1, 2, and 3 lands. So that overall vision from the original Partisans concept, we're trying to continue to achieve through the entire secondary plan. David did speak to earlier, and it is noted in my staff report, that within section 16, it does indicate that if there is conflict between the MZO permissions and the secondary plan, that the MZO permissions in TOC 1 and 2 would prevail.
So thanks for that, but I'm still a bit confused. What the MZO, I was under the impression, overrides the secondary plan. So can you tell me with some specifics what components of the secondary plan will control the type of development that goes on in TOC 1 and TOC 2?
So Mayor Dolan, through to Councillor Waters, there are still the principles that are within the secondary plan. So the sustainability principles, the innovation, the green spine areas, the transit linkages, the green corridors, those components, through those principles in the secondary plan, we would still be looking to achieve those as long as they don't conflict with the MZO permissions on those density requirements or those height requirements. So it's looking to take those principles that are in the secondary plan and wherever possible, align them in the TOC 1 and 2 area to get the vision that council was looking for from as we've continued to evolve. But if there's a conflict with those specific density requirements or height requirements, those MZO permissions apply.
Okay, all right. So we do have some control over TOC 1 and TOC 2 in terms of the secondary plan.
Councillor Waters, if it passes, I guess.
Yes.
And I had some feedback from someone watching on the live stream that if you could put your mic a little bit closer to your mouth, you're a little bit hard to hear. Thank you so much. Other questions and comments on this item? I'm going to ask a question. Could one of you please address Mr. Stilich's comments about the density in TOC 3?
Yes, and it might be helpful. I'm wondering to go to slide 17, where the phasing population requirements are. And David, I think you did start to speak to this a little bit, where we talked about the short term and medium term, and that 25,000 population being within TOC 1 and TOC 2, and that, you know, post 2051, so that the remaining population, which would be that 65,000 that Mr. Stilich is talking about, the assumption is that that would all be within TOC 3, but you know, you did speak to it. The intent would be that the highest density is actually in TOC 1, TOC 2, and that, you know, not all of that 65,000 would be solely within TOC 3. There would be intensification within the TOC 1 and TOC 2 lands.
Yeah, that's correct, Director Lee, and I'll add a little bit more to that as well. So the entire 63,000 or 65,000 post 2051 does not need to be accommodated within TOC 3. It could be accommodated within remaining lands within TOC 1 and TOC 2 as well. Within TOC 3, I very much appreciated the work that went into the deputation. I was not entirely clear on the density calculations that were coming up when it was comparing areas of the City of Toronto to orbit. I don't know if it was an apples to apples comparison, whereby you were able to just subtract out the, approximately 50% of the land that would be there for parks and open space, and that would essentially have those density projections. And when it comes to building heights, the building heights permitted within TOC3, they range between 6 to 10 stories, 4 to 5 stories, and 2 to 3 stories. So the majority of all permitted heights within TOC3 are actually within the 4 to 5 story range. So you're looking at very much a mid-rise development with heights in certain areas that would be 2 to 3 stories. So more looking at that, that low density, street related type of housing.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just I want to commend you on the fact that 50%, up to 50% is going to be green space. And when you have this type of high density, you really do need that green space to create those types of communities and, and welcoming. So I really want to commend you on that piece, and also the natural heritage piece. So I think those are well represented here, and I think they'll add to a really nice community. Just a quick question. Could you talk about inclusionary zoning and what that means?
That's a great question. I'm not sure whether Director Lee, if you'd like me to handle that, or if you would like to address that question.
Yep, if you want to start, that's great.
Happy to do so. So the plan itself directs that inclusionary zoning within and affordable housing within the secondary plan will be subject to higher level policy. To date, that means that development within protected major transit station areas are required to provide inclusionary zoning. My understanding, and perhaps Director Lee, you may be able to shed more insight on that those discussions of exactly how that will roll out is under conversation with the county at this time. But my understanding is that the requirement for inclusionary zoning would be within the protected major transit station area. And we are specifically saying that as policy evolves at the provincial level, the secondary plan will follow suit.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? So I did want to address the comments that were in the report, and all of them were responded to. Thank you for that. And then also, council did receive correspondence from Airdon Verlis yesterday, and also from Boost Fields on February the 15th regarding comments on the draft secondary plan. And as a non-planner, I want to ask, so all throughout the comments from the representatives of Cortel, I keep reading too prescriptive, too prescriptive, too prescriptive, and definitely Xing out all of the, recommending that we X out all of the digital innovation pieces, that it's not appropriate. But then when I read the other comments, most of them, I think from WTF, from the Williams Treaty First Nation, but maybe I'm wrong. What I got was not enough detail, not enough detail. So explain to me this, how a secondary plan works, kind of between, like, if we said, yes, Cortel, you're right, all of this stuff is too prescriptive, it shouldn't be in the secondary plan. How do we get it in the end?
So perhaps I will jump in on that one, Mayor Dolan. I think that's the balance. I mean, the secondary plan is intended to be that guiding framework, that overarching policy framework that establishes how development applications going forward, the site-specific development applications, will be considered. And so in putting together the secondary plan, and in my review of what David and the team have put together, we believe the policy language that's in there is appropriate for the secondary plan coming forward to council, that it sets that framework of the specifics of what would then be considered in each development application going forward. So there are some very intentional languages in there in terms of digital innovation, sustainability. Again, those are all the fundamentals of the principles and the goals that previous councils and this council have identified that they wanted achieved through this secondary plan. And so we continue to recommend that the plan that is before you today is the one that we are asking council to approve to move forward. And then the details would be implemented through those specific condominium or site plan applications. David, I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to add.
No, I think you addressed that very well. So it's very much a delicate balance between wanting to have the right level of concrete direction with this secondary plan, but wanting to provide a level of flexibility to applicants as they come forward with applications. The secondary plan very much sets the policies against which development applications will be reviewed. We've been very deliberate in terms of the language where we use shall, which when it says shall, that means that has to be followed. Where we've used language like should, and should is more around these are the objectives that we're trying to achieve, and there's more flexibilities associated with that. And we have identified a series of that were outside of the scope of this project, but that would be part of the implementation and phasing of it, such as developing a monitoring plan when it comes to specific items such as the district energy system, which I know will be spoken to, ensuring that development is future-proof to allow for the future implementation of that. But essentially what we're trying to achieve is the right balance to achieve the principles of the plan and future-proofing it for as things change in the future.
Thank you. CEO Gershow.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. Just to add to the comments that have been made and perhaps just to remind council, a secondary plan is ultimately something that is done under the Planning Act. And as much as we seek to plan comprehensively and in a holistic way for the development of any community, including the orbit, there are limits to what any municipality can do under the Planning Act. And, you know, Andrea and David can speak a bit more to that, but I think that puts some legal limitations on the town's ability to require things. I mean, in general, municipalities have to operate within the province's legal framework. And while we can certainly advocate for things that we believe in, when push comes to shove, there are certain things the municipality has legal authority to do and other things it does not have legal authority to do. And ultimately it's through, essentially the courts, so the OLT and so on, where the boundary is really determined when people disagree about where that authority starts and stops. So I think that's just something to keep in mind. You know, there's questions of conflicts. I mean, we try to resolve them. We try to strike a balance of competing interests. If council approves the plan, it is possible, it is appealed, and these sorts of issues will be settled through a tribunal process.
Thank you. And if I understood the report correctly, though, it can't be appealed until the county approves it, and the county can't approve it until OPA 7 is approved. Is that correct?
Correct, Mayor Dolan. Currently, the legislative framework that's in place, and I think council all appreciates that continues to change, but the framework today is that County OPA 7, which designates that major transit station area and that expansion to Alcona, would be required to be approved by the province and has not been at this point in time.
Thank you. And I did notice also in your report, Director Lee, that there were several comments from the major landholder that were addressed, and policies were made more flexible and changed based on the comments that they made.
Yes, Mayor Dolan. So, I mean, it's been an iterative process. And obviously, as Oliver said, and as David spoke to in the presentation, there has been significant community consultation through this process. We certainly appreciate that, Cortel is the major landholder, specifically in TOC 1 and 2, and then a number of the TOC 3 lands. But at the public meeting, as you saw on the list, we did hear from other developers in those areas. And subsequent to the public meeting, there were other conversations with developers. So we've tried to balance all of those inquiries and requests in terms of the policies that have been brought forward from the consulting team to present to council tonight.
Thank you. One final question for me, and then I'll go to members of council to see if anything else is sparked. But a complete community includes employment land. So is there specific, would be office space? Would that be in employment lands, or is there a specific, would there be office space in this plan?
Sorry, Mayor Dolan, there is office permitted uses throughout the plan. They're certainly permitted within the major transit area designation. They are permitted within a specific, I believe there are 2 types of employment designations, and they are permitted within other areas of the plan as well. Yes.
Thank you for that. Anyone else have any comments or questions before we wrap up? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan, and thank you very much for bringing up the letter from the Cortel Group. I was going to leave that alone, but since you brought it up, I'd just like to give you an idea that in a lot of their comments, they basically wanted to gut most of the sustainability issues in the orbit. So they wanted to delete all mention of the digital innovation. They wanted to delete the district heating system. They wanted to delete the green corridors, and they disagreed with the 48% target of green space. They wanted to just encourage renewable energy as opposed to make it a shall. They also wanted to eliminate the basis around net zero carbon emissions, delete the idea of third-party verification around LEED. They wanted to delete inclusionary zoning for affordable homes, and delete all reference to carbon footprint, embodied energy, gray water, and conservation of waste during construction. So, I'm glad we're sticking to our guns. Thank you, staff, for doing that, because this would just be a high dense development with no green space, and I think it's a much better development the way you've left the secondary plan. So congratulations on that. We may disagree on the energy piece, but I think the rest of it is well done, and it will make for a very, very different community. And last but not least, we always get caught up on what this development is going to be. The rest of Innisfil remains as farmland and agricultural rural is what we wanted to have. The only other development might be in Stroud and Alcona North, but most of Innisfil is going to remain the same. So by 2021, our kids will see Innisfil still as a rural community with a really nice urban population close to the lake. So congratulations on that. I know I bothered you a lot around energy piece, but I think we've struck a good balance here. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I could perhaps just build off of Mayor Dolan's question, and thank you very much. Appreciate those comments, Councillor Waters. But the specific areas that permit office use within the secondary plan area are major transit station, mixed use area, employment area, and mixed commercial / employment area. Those are the 3 designations.
Thank you so much. I agree with almost all of what Councillor Waters says. I think we stuck to our vision more than we stuck to our guns, and that wasn't just our vision. It was a vision that we all agreed to right from the get-go, but we've also been flexible. So I think that we're finding the right. We have to make sure that this is successful. It can't just be another 4 towers and a GO train station. We can't let that happen, because that will be a a fail from what we've said we were going to do for so long. So we have to stick to our word on that. Anyone else before we read the recommendation? Seeing none, I want to thank you so much, Mr. Sajecki and Director Lee, for the presentation. And I ask for a mover and a seconder, please, to receive. That would be Councillor Richardson and Deputy Mayor Fowler. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So that takes us to item now. We've been 2 hours, according to our new procedural bylaw, which hasn't passed yet. We're supposed to have a 10-minute refresh. I'm checking in with everybody to see if that's required. Okay, why don't we do a 5 minutes since we don't have far to go in our, okay. So it is now 9:03. We'll come back at 9:10 if that works for everyone. Thank you.
Did you hear me using Doug Ford word, shovels in the ground?
All right, it's 9:10, so let's carry on with our meeting. We're on item number 7. Does anyone have a report out on any of the committees that they attend on behalf of Innisfil? Deputy Mayor Feller.
Thank you. Thank you, Worship. We had the Traffic Safety Committee meeting last week where we discussed a number of topics, one being the traffic calming strategies that are being put in place across Innisfil and the various methods that are being used. My favorite is still the flexible bollards. I like the way that they can narrow down the roads and easily removable and don't do minimum damage to the tarmac itself. And for those who are curious about the initial impacts of the red light camera, so far we've had a very good success with it, although to get a better understanding of how long this will last, it's going to take some time and a little more data, but so far everything seems to be working as planned. At the county level, there are a lot of things that we discussed. One of the things that stood out was the organics management. They projected it over the next 25 years, what they're looking to do. When they were initially looking at building their own organics processing facility, they realized that the time, effort, cost, land was not feasible. So we looked into some outsourcing, and we found 2 good contracts, a short-term contract and a long-term contract. And over the next 23 years, it's projected to save the county and the taxpayer $221 million. So on that front, we're making some headway and doing some right for the people. Thank you.
Thank you. haven't done this for a while and I've got to get my mouse working again. Councillor Richardson.
Yes, we had our library board meeting last week. We had a great presentation from Mandy, who talked about equity, diversity, and inclusion in collection management. So it's interesting to learn a little bit about that and how they've addressed it, how they can improve it, that sort of thing. As well as we talked about our big Spark event that is happening tomorrow night, actually, 7 o'clock at the library.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Anyone else have any meetings that they've been to on behalf of Innisfil? Seeing none, we'll go to item 7.2, which is a recommendation around attending training sessions, conferences, and our business expense policy. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Drodge, seconded by Councillor Saunders. All those in favor? That is carried. We'll now move to our consent list agenda. And as usual, we'll go through each of these items. If anyone has questions, please feel free to ask them, or if you'd like to refer to committee, please do that as well. So we'll go with item A1, the special council meeting minutes from February 14th. A2, the council meeting minutes from February 14th. B1, that would be the Innisfil Heritage Advisory Committee meeting from February 1st. B2, the Innisfil Accessibility Advisory Committee from February 13th. C1, we've already voted on. C2 is the Orbit Secondary Plan. Could I ask the clerk, please, for recorded vote on this item? Do I have to refer it to do that, or can we just do it right from here?
Actually, it should be referred to committee and we'll do the recorded vote at that time.
Thank you. Could I ask someone if they would refer that item to committee? Councillor Drodge, thank you. C3, District Energy System Update. Councillor Fowler?
Defer, please.
Thank you. C4, the objection to notice of intention of designating 6225 Young Street. Seeing none. C5, the school zone speed limits update. D1, the non-standard procurement for the campus drainage improvements. D2, the annual corporate policy update. E1, and I would ask if our new deputy clerk might turn his camera on for just a second if he's able to, so we can introduce you to our new deputy clerk, Kevin Jacobs. Congratulations, Kevin. Well, we haven't passed the bylaw yet, so maybe not, but congratulations, Kevin, well deserved. And E2, that would be the rules governing the procedures of council, our new procedural bylaw. Any questions or comments on that? Well done, Madam Clerk. E3, that would be to dedicate assumed lands that's the former part of Raynor Court. Councillor Waters. Refer to committee?
No, I just want to make a comment. I want to thank Lee for helping me out quite a bit. That was a resident who was having problems with a piece of property, and it was a piece of land that had been not assumed by the town. And so I want to thank him a lot for all the work that he did and the discussions that we had, and for being flexible and listening to me. So I want to thank him very much for all that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. E4, that would be the Friday Harbor Spring Load exemption. And then we have no correspondence for actions. So our correspondence for information, we have the meeting highlights from Simcoe County, the It Starts proclamation. We raised the flag at the county yesterday. So the month of March is our It Starts with us. And oh my goodness, somebody help me with that word. Amyloidosis Awareness Month.
Amyloidosis.
Thank you. So seeing none other, so we have the consent list recommendation. And we have, I think, 2 items we've referred. Thank you. A mover and a seconder, please, for the consent list recommendation. Councillor Zanella and Councillor Saunders, all those in favor? That is carried. Now we resolve to committee of the whole, please. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Drodge, Councillor Richardson, all those in favor? That's carried. And we have the Orbit secondary plan. I just wanted to ask for a recorded vote on this important milestone. Councillor Drodge, did you have anything to add?
No, I'm pulling it only for the recorded vote. Can Deputy Mayor Fowler be my seconder?
Thank you.
Councillor Drodge?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Fowler?
Aye.
Councillor Zanella?
She's indicating yes with the
Constantine?
green card.
Yes.
Mayor Dolan?
In favor.
Councillor Saunders?
I'm good, thank you.
Councillor Ices?
In favor.
Councillor Waters?
In favor.
All right.
I think we're missing Councillor Richardson.
And Councillor Richardson, my apologies.
All good. Yes, in favor.
9 votes in favor, the motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And next is item C3, and that was pulled by Councillor Fowler.
If I could ask Councillor Drudge to back it. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Worship. There's one question I do have regarding the district energy system. It's one of the choices we have with the town consideration for a public-private partnership. Now, with the companies, how much control would we have over this? Like if it comes down to it, who puts the money up initially? Is it a 50-50 split? Is there a contract that has to be negotiated for this if there's issues that arise? Are we accountable, or is it, or are we like, there's too many things I'd like to know. I mean, like, to build it ourselves, obviously, clearly it's not something I can fall behind because of what it is. But we have the experts come in and work with us in regarding to the system. Is it something that's negotiable as how it moves forward, or is it a boilerplate, for lack of a better term?
Thank you. I'll go to Ms. Bandaroo, who's our sustainability catalyst.
I think Mayor Dolan, I'll actually probably address that question.
Sorry. Okay.
No, that's okay. We were kind of going to tag team some of the questions. In terms of your questions, Deputy Mayor Fowler, there isn't one specific answer at this point in time. You know, it's the principle of a private-public partnership, and depending on who that private partner or the multiple other partners that we bring into that, it would vary what the town's role could be, how much the town would contribute. So it was the concept behind that, and if you supported that concept, we would go out and seek those partners and then report back to you to say, here are the options. Which option do you like of those partnerships?
Philip, if I may. Now that would include, I'm assuming, the connection with the water treatment plant for the efficiency levels and everything else, or would that be negotiated at that point in time?
It would include those connections. We didn't go into a lot of detail in the staff report in terms of the wastewater treatment plant and how the district energy would work. But obviously in-services would be a component of that partnership and how that would move forward in terms of implementation.
Okay. I just want to put on record that I support that particular option. And I know Councillor Waters would agree with me. It reduces energy, and it is something that is more economical to the taxpayer overall. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't understand. Which did you support, Councillor? Which option?
Tying into these to the water treatment plant, using the thermal energy and whatnot, and the biomass potential for biomass. This way, when it comes to heating the buildings and the boilers or the units that are put in place, it reduces the greenhouse gases like significantly, and puts less strain. It takes off some of the strain of the waste heat that the water treatment plant would encounter.
Okay, and is that 1, 2, or 3? I'm still.
I'm looking at number 2 personally. That I believe number 2 it is on them.
I'm sorry. Okay, I understand now. Anyone else want to speak to this? Councillor Waters.
I agree with the deputy mayor. Is that option 3 basically is a nail in the coffin of any type of district heating system. One of the most important aspects of the orbit was having a district heating system which would dramatically reduce carbon emissions. It'd be much more efficient across the town. You know, anyone who does a high density development, Markham Business Center is a good example. They chose to go district heating, in which Markham is a keen partner in all of that. Option 3 says, let's just go to the private sector and let's hand it off to them. Unfortunately, we know from a letter from the Cortel Group, they're really not interested. So, you know, you can't have a third party private business try to negotiate with the developer who doesn't want to have anything to do with it. I think we need to be in the mix in order to move this whole thing forward. So I think option 2 is a better option for the town, and also through enterprises is a business opportunity. We keep on talking about EPCOR and how EPCOR grew and was this wonderful thing. Here we have an opportunity to, you know, work within services, work within power through enterprises, through, you know, a 3P partnership that would help move this forward. So working with Enbridge as a partner. So I think this thing is dead in the water unless the town is part of it. If we think we're just going to be able to hand it off to somebody and say, oh, go work with Cortel and see what you can do, it's not going anywhere. So I think it's a kind of a way for I apologize to the administration to say, this has been a long and storied thing. We've known for 4 years we wanted this, and we're nowhere near close to getting the core piece of what the article was supposed to be. So I agree with the deputy mayor. I think we should put a motion, an amendment forward to go with option 2 as opposed to option 3, because option 3 is you might as well just kill it.
I'll second that.
I have a question. What if it was amended to say that council supports option 2 or option 3 as outlined? Would that make any sense, Director Lee?
Mayor Dolan, I think the distinction between option 2 and option 3 is option 2, we would be the partner. So financially, we would be invested in the district energy system. In option 3, we would be looking to be essentially a facilitator. So bringing private partners, developers together, and they would implement the system. So that's really that sort of fundamental distinction between option 2 and 3.
I guess what I was thinking is, it would depend what opportunities arose. If there was a private company who said, yes, we want to do it, then it could be option 3. But if we found a good private partner, I know it's really capital intensive, but if we had a good capital partner, maybe we could be option 2. That's just my thought. Any other comments or questions on this? Deputy Mayor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. In regards to option 2, the reason I feel so strongly about and supporting it is it allows us to have some control over the situation, working hand in hand with the district energy units. When it comes to something that we're literally telling people we're going to have more people in this 850-meter diameter area than all of Alcona, I don't want to just hand off and, trust somebody who has a good record. Don't get me wrong, but if something goes wrong, if something goes south, we have no control over it. We have no say in it. We have no option with it. I'd like to be made aware step by step as we move forward as a partner, and that may cost a little, but in the grand scheme of things, we're doing what realistically we're elected to do. We're actually speaking for the people in that area by having a say at the table, because we've already been burned with the MZO where we have a seat there, but it's only out of courtesy sometimes. I can't give this away, not without having a say in the matter.
I agree with the deputy mayor on that again. If you think about it, it's like we can have one heating cooling system that's super energy efficient. It can be used for heating, cooling, or heating sidewalks, so we don't use salt. It could recover waste heat from the wastewater treatment system, as in Falls Creek in Vancouver, which did that and made the system a heck of a lot more efficient by using the waste heat from the sewer water system. And it saves having hundreds upon hundreds of different heating systems out there, which could be, natural gas for 100 years. And we want to be, it's supposed to be a low carbon community. You can't do that when you're going to be having hundreds of natural gas facilities. So, I would like to see go with option 2, or if it's a medial, option 2 and option 3. I could live with either way, but I think option 2 most definitely has to be there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zanella.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If we went with option 2, there would be a cost to us. And I would have to know what the cost would be before I can really agree to it. So is there any way staff can come back and give us an approximate cost?
Director Lee?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Dolan. So within the staff report, we do identify the costs that were in the pre-feasibility study. So we're looking at the cost of essentially the 70 million to create the system. It's a question of how much of that the town would be on the hook for of that 770 million, or what we would have private investors for. So we're not asking, as we note in the report for staff, if council picked that option, you're not committing to that amount of money tonight. We would come back to you based on private partnerships that we were able to secure. And as the deputy mayor said, you know, how is that? Is it a 70-30, a 60-40? What does that look like? So we would come back to you in terms of the options that were available that would then determine the amount of cost and control that the town would have.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Drudge?
Thank you, Your Worship. So if we supported option 2, could it be amended in the future if, you know, down the road when this project actually starts and maybe the town is not in the position to invest? Can it be amended at that time? Can we relook at it again?
Director Lee?
Through to Councillor Drudge, if council goes with option 2, staff would go away, we would investigate private partnerships, and we would come back, we would report back. So essentially that's what the direction would be, is we'd come back to you with those options. You would then determine from those options how you wanted to proceed. We need to make those decisions relatively quickly, as we noted in the report, and as you would have seen from the Airden Burles correspondence from the developer, because of the timing of their current site plan applications and whether, you know, because they are looking for those approvals fairly soon. So we would go back to some of the partners that we've talked to or explore other partnerships and then report back as quickly as we could. And then you would make that decision based on the information that we present back to you.
Okay, thank you for that information. So basically, if we supported option 2, you're going to, for lack of better words, dig deeper and see if we have any avenues there and then report back to council.
That's correct, Councillor Drudge. I think the only thing I would say, I mean, by supporting, you know, whether it was option 1 or option 2, and I've certainly heard council's discussion tonight, you're essentially saying that in principle, you support a district energy system, and that you're looking to have some control in the implementation of that district energy. That's really what you're saying by implementing option 1 or 2, and then 2 says we're looking to have partnerships to make that work because we're not the experts.
Dolan, if I could just add to Director Lee's last comment, I think options 1 and 2 also importantly imply a commercial interest of the town, i.e. we're going to spend our money to make the system happen, whether that's through the upfront capital cost or sustaining it over time. So, I mean, it's a fair amount of work, and I think that's fundamentally why this report is in front of council tonight, is whether there's sufficient commitment to seriously pursue this, because it would require significant resources. And, you know, a partner is very quickly going to ask, well, what is the town putting on the table? So to answer Councillor Zanella's question, you know, has already been stated, I mean, it is a back and forth dialogue, and we've already had in the last 2 years some of these preliminary conversations. I mean, there are investors out there. I've had conversations with Infrastructure Ontario. I've had conversations with folks from the infrastructure group at OMERS. You know, there are people who do this as a business, and I think options 1 and 2 are saying the town wants to get into the district energy business. We're going to work on that and come back to council to see whether there's a viable business plan. Whereas option 3 is saying we're not giving up on district energy, but we don't think we can be in the business, but we will help try and bring together parties with Cortel and other landowners in the Orbit area to see if they can come to a deal.
Councillor Waters?
Thank you, Your Worship. We keep on forgetting in this whole discussion is that when you're a partner, you also get to get the benefits of a revenue. So if this is not something the town's going to, be on the hook for putting out millions of dollars, there is a revenue return for as long as that system is up and running. And so when you put it in option 3, we get nothing. We help facilitate it, and if Cortel says no to that third party, it's dead. The project's dead. At least with us in the picture, we can move it forward and we can benefit from it by getting those revenues down the road. We talked about EPCOR and how EPCOR, and the city of Calgary created EPCOR and now contributes $125 million. That's the whole thing we talked about enterprise. That's what we want to happen there. If every time we're asked, we're going to have to put some money into it, we get skittish about it, then, we're never going to be that, that entrepreneurial, innovative, municipality that we talk about on a regular basis. So I think option 2, we don't want to fund the whole thing. We want to find the experts and they may come back, say, okay, it's a 70-30 split. And, but it's going to come back to us. We'll get to assess it. We're just asking the town staff to go away, put some more effort into it, come back, give us a better idea what we can do here. Because the Orbit is a much better community with a district heating system than without a district heating system. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. Well, I do agree with some of the comments that were raised regarding option 2. I guess I have a little bit of a concern over, are we as council asking staff to do too much in saying that, we're doing this review on utilities. You want to do things well. So I'm wondering if just the reason why option 3 was suggested by staff maybe points to perhaps we don't have the resources to do something like this well. So I guess I would look to staff maybe to comment on that if there is quite a bit of work to going in after the option 2, is that something that at the current levels can be done?
Director Lee? You're on mute.
Click the button too fast, Mayor Dolan. My apologies on that. Thank you. Through you to Councillor Ices. I appreciate that question. At this point in time, Councillor Ices, we do not have the resources in-house to look for all those partnerships and the expertise. As we noted in the staff report, we had been using FEB Energy previously. They had done some of the business case and pre-feasibility study, but there is additional work that they would be required to provide assistance to the town in looking for those partnerships. And it would also be the staff time in terms of those discussions. And we would obviously, those discussions are not just town, but they would have to involve in-services and their team as well, in terms of looking at those partnerships. So there is an investment of resources. We would have to go back and confirm that both town staff and in-services can prioritize that. And also we would be looking at the costs that FBB Energy had provided to us to assist us, which off the top of my head, I believe was in the 25,000 range. And Nahariko, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the next component of their support in helping us work through those partnerships and feasibility.
So follow up, it sounds like the town would be more of a partner just financially. And I think council needs to think very hard about what that cost would be. especially in light of all the other capital costs we're looking to do in the town and during this time, whether it's continuing to get services to Innisfil Heights or just the general capital costs that we need to do for the rest of the town. So that would be, I guess that would be my question as well. Are we picking this over something else?
CAO Gershow?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. I want to underscore and add to Ms. Lee's comments because I think the work involved to seriously and properly explore a partnership here goes well beyond, $25,000 of consulting work to, think about it a bit more. And frankly, the reason this has taken, depending when you start counting, 4 years to come back to council in the first place is that I think we are currently struggling to find the resources to do, the deep due diligence that setting up a district energy company would require. So I think fundamentally what we're asking is council going to direct staff to allocate significant time and resources to this, because I guess what I would add is it's not just a matter of imagining what a district energy system could be. We are talking about basically creating a new business that needs to invest tens of millions of dollars. And to Councillor Waters' point, yes, to hopefully generate a revenue stream. But one of the fundamental questions is, will there be any customers to pay those revenues? Because if Cortel and the ultimate, people who live in the orbit do not connect to the system, then there is no revenue. So it's interesting to note that we have a letter from them tonight identifying Cortel's own reservations about participating in the system. So we should really not underestimate the amount of time and work and money that this would require. And I guess, we will take council's direction. If you are truly committed to district energy, you can direct us accordingly. But Councillor Ices, to answer your question directly, it will be a significant effort to even build the business case to bring back to you whether to make those further investments.
Other questions or comments? Deputy Fowler.
Thank you, Worship. So what I'm understanding is the hitch in the get along is primarily that Cortel is resistant to this idea. If they were more open to the idea, staff would be more accommodating and comfortable with option 2. If we look at option 3, how much time and energy are we putting into trying to get them to meet, to join, to talk, to do this? Because ultimately, if it falls flat, we're not losing anything, but if it goes through, we're missing out on an opportunity. So what kind of comparison are we looking at in spending regarding funds for option 3?
Theo Gershow.
So I guess the challenge is that we very quickly run into some fairly fundamental questions, like who has 50, 70, $100 million to invest in the capital construction of this system in the first place? That's more than just going to Cortel and saying, what do you think about district energy? And again, I think if we're looking at option 1 and 2, I mean, those are the hard questions that need to be answered. Who will put up the money? Who will own the system? Who will operate the system? How will it operate over a period of decades? Who will the customers be? I mean, we're talking about basically trying to do a commercial deal. So, I mean, I would estimate we'd need both commercial and legal advisory help to actually do this properly. How do you structure the deal and the partnership legally? And how do you structure a commercial arrangement? I mean, yes, other places have done it. Markham is a commonly cited example. I had a call, one-on-one, hour-long call with their CEO. They built that system over decades with a founding partner in IBM who was highly committed to the project. And they've subsequently built it over time. So, I think saying $25,000 for FVB is a serious underestimate. I think if we're going to get serious about pursuing this concept, we would need serious commercial and legal advisory support. We would probably have to go into the market and do some kind of market call to say, district energy owners and operators, are you interested in participating in a potential system in Innisfil? And, I think that's the beginnings of the conversation option 2 entails. And you can imagine the questions that those parties would begin to ask, because if I were in their shoes, I would want to know, well, who will my customers be? How much will they pay? How much do I have to put in upfront? When will I recover my investment? What will the rate of return be? And so on. So, these are questions that can be explored. It will be, so it's not just a matter of, well, if we ask Cortel a bit more, we'll get there. It will be a serious business undertaking.
If I may, to follow up, thoughts on the process with that is we're not discussing, I'm sorry, Oliver. The thoughts I have on this is we're not discussing a subdivision. We're not talking homes with the 3-foot distance between the brick and the fence line, and then another 3 between the properties. We're talking 3 40-story buildings that has to have some pull there. And the idea of someone says, well, who are my customers going to be? If you're talking 10 units per floor, that's 1,200 people. If they have 1,000 units each, right? We're talking significant heating out of the system. So if we're talking like even on a beginning basis, right, where we can talk about how, look, we're going to try these 3 buildings to begin with, right? And if it works out, then we can use the income to expand as we expand the orbit, or potentially connect it to the water treatment plant. That would provide future savings. So the idea that someone comes in and says, it's going to be $70 million and we're going to do this entire area, but at the same time, we can't get the first 3 buildings, as Grace put shovels in the ground, there has to be a staggered process or something we can do to grow it as talk 1 and talk 2 move out. Because all I'm hearing maybe I'm misunderstanding, is the idea that we got $70 million up front. It's going to cover the entire area. All the groundwork is going to be put through, and we may not see revenue because it may be 10-15 years before the other buildings are put into play in the multi-story unit buildings, or it may take extra time to get down to the water treatment plant to make the connection. Is there not a way we can start small and potentially grow it organically? Or am I missing that point?
Director Lee?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. I think there's a couple of pieces in there, Deputy Mayor Fowler, that I'd like to speak to. And I think it was in Oliver's comment. It's certainly in the Airden Burles letter you received. But I think the first fundamental is legislatively, the town cannot require and mandate connection. So without a willing developer, those 3 40-story towers, we cannot require them to connect to it. So that was, I think, where Oliver's coming from in terms of, where is the revenue stream if you're not able to mandate those connections. And then just to clarify, because I did look back in the financial considerations section of the report, the initial feasibility talked about the first phase at 70 million. When you look at page 5 of my staff report, it does actually speak to phases 1A and B actually being at 123 million, and then an additional 15 million for the next phase. So a total of 138.
Thank you. I saw Councillor Saunders and then Councillor Drudge and then Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can we get this deferred to a later date? there's a lot of money coming on to what we're saying is like 15 million, 25,000, 70 million. Can we not defer it a little bit to see if Cortel would come online with us? I'm not confident to making a decision tonight about this without them online. I mean, you know, it's literally, it's their area. And if they don't want to have their customers sign up on it, they're not going to do it. And so we're going to put all this money into something that we're not going to get any return on. Like, I'm a businessman and you'd love to get a business return. But if you're not going to get a business return, then why do it?
Councillor Drudge.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just for some clarification. So, like when you, Deputy Mayor Fowler, referred to the three 40-story buildings, there's really only one customer currently when they're being built, and that is Cortel. And then they sell to individuals. So Cortel is the one that decides if those 3 40-story buildings get hooked up to direct energy heating system. So I do wholly believe that if we don't have Cortel online, we could do this investment, have it sitting there waiting, and he just simply reviews it. And that would be my biggest concern.
Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Worship. I find it awfully interesting that we can produce a secondary plan where Cortel doesn't want to do any of the sustainability stuff, but we're asking him, we're putting it in there anyways, and we might have to go to court to get him to do it. There are jurisdictions, and I'm not too sure why, you know, it can be made mandatory in terms of connection. We could make this an all-electric, you know, community without any gas and put that in the secondary plan, but we haven't done that. But I'll say this, is that I've been asking, you know, our previous director of development to, you know, tell us where this was at. And it wasn't until that individual left that we found out that he hadn't had the full discussion, you know, with Cortel. And to be quite honest with you, I've felt resistance internally from all the senior administration staff at the town that they didn't want to do this. And because they seem a bit overwhelmed by it, but we're willing to ask in services to spend millions upon millions of dollars. And we could also ask them to, you know, to find the resources, or for us to find the resources, because we think there's a great opportunity to make this, you know, a much better community, right? But I think the report has come across is that town doesn't really want to do this. And so we're going to build and give you the numbers that make you feel negative towards it. I apologize, Oliver, but from day one, this is where I thought we would end up in terms of providing a sustainable community, is that the town really doesn't want to do it. And we've just given the council the opportunity to say no, and we can get out of it and forget about it and move on. This is going to be the largest development in Innisfil. This is Innisfil in 2050 and in 2099. And we're going to just allow Cortel to say, you know, we're not going to be partnered with it. You know, we could put, I agree, we're going to invest some money into it in terms of round, you know, to investigate this further, but to discard it at this stage and yeah, I think is a big mistake.
So I'm going to go back to my original question again. Why couldn't we have the staff reports say council supports option 2 or 3? Because if there's somebody out there, I think part of it is we don't have the expertise. So how much do we want to invest? How many people do we want to hire? We say we want to be in charge and we want some input. And yet if we don't have the people here that can do it, we could really be in a mess. And I think at that point, you know, option 3 makes sense, right? Finding somebody who's committed to it, finding that person who's committed to it, meet with Cortel and say, look what this is going to save you, and look how much return on investment you're going to get. And a person who really understands it could partner with Cortel and talk him into it. But we can't, Because we don't have the resources and we don't have the people who understand it or the people who have the money to invest in it. That's my rant for the day. So we still have option 3 on the table. Any final comments from anyone?
I could live with option 2 and option 3 and on the recommendation.
Councillor Ices?
Just based on the discussion about how much work option 2 would take to get a good analysis of it, I don't think option 2 belongs in the motion. So I would vote for this motion and see where we go.
So we have the mover would be Deputy Mayor Fowler. Any comments?
Instead of support, is it possible to alter the wording as a friendly amendment to investigate option 3? That way they can come back and say, this is what we found. We found a partner that's willing to do the work and the heavy lifting, as opposed to saying we're throwing our weight behind it. And so council council directs staff to investigate option 3 as outlined in staff report DSR 02924 and return to council. Is there a way we can work that in? Like we can get some answers before we decide?
So this report is the investigation. This report is a result of us already saying that. Go out, do the work, and bring back what you found out. Is it not? CEO Joshua?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. We're trying to get clarity on how much more work council would like us to invest in this investigation. So I would disagree with Councillor Waters that we've given up. If you really, really want us to pursue it, and I just think we will pursue it. I think council needs to be clear on the hurdles in front of us. But you know, we will take council's direction, but that is what we're seeking tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Drudge, and then we're going to go to a vote.
Thank you, Worship. Just for so option 3, if we voted on option 3 and it passed, staff would come back with the person like that we're going to facilitate to. Does that still come back to council, or is that completely a staff issue once this is approved?
So Mayor Dolan, perhaps I'll address option 3. The way I looked at it was we were going to be there to provide assistance in connecting those partners. So connecting the developer to the other partners, essentially that facilitation role. We weren't intending to provide a staff report back. We could certainly update council and advise that partners were secured and they're working through that. But we really don't have an active role in taking that forward other than those initial introductions and facilitation.
So what we need, or go ahead.
Just for clarification then, so we will actively facilitate this to hook up an individual that's interested in this project with Cortel. We won't stop until we have procured that, correct?
We would, sorry, Mayor Dolan, through to Councillor Drudge, the staff would actively work to try and find those partners and connect them. But if they can't make that work, or if Cortel chooses that they don't want to pursue that, we can't force them to pursue that. We would just try and build those connections if feasible.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
So we need to find a Councillor Waters who is passionate about district energy and has lots of investors. Right? That's what we're looking for. And somebody who can go and convince those investors that this is the thing to do. Councillor Waters?
Quick question to Director Lee is that how do some communities decide that communities are all electric and there's no gas in them? And in terms of, do developers just say, okay, we're going to abide by that, or they buy into it? So this is kind of the same question. If we decide in our secondary plan that district energy is what we want, we may miss the first two buildings. You do have in the secondary plan that they have to make them geothermal ready. So if we miss the first two buildings out of the entire community, then at least we know that we can come back to those two communities. So my question is, how do other communities, A, make it mandatory, or B, how do they make communities all electric and forego natural gas?
Director Lee?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. In terms of how do they make it mandatory, I think it's been in areas where they've had a willing developer partner that they've been able to work with to implement it. It's not a legislative component that allows it to be mandatory. So that's the struggle we're facing, is that if we don't have a willing partner to implement it, we can't mandate that to happen. In terms of the gas and the electric, I'm not sure, Naharka, if that's something you wanted to speak to.
Thanks, Andrea. Through you, Madam Mayor. So in terms of the gas and the electric, I think if I'm misunderstanding your question, Councillor Waters, please correct me. But I believe if in place of district energy, if we were to pursue a non-gas, non-electric option, it would go down to individual buildings. Like that there's an option that the individual buildings can be supplied by individual geo heat exchange systems, which means individual boreholes for every building. So that's an option that FEB has already investigated in the past. And then we'd also be looking at individual buildings energy performance standards, but then again, that would be something we need Cortel's or the developers' cooperation on. The third alternative, and this might be a little bit of a stretch, is to look into how solar or other renewable energy systems could be used to power buildings. But as far as recommendations from FEB go to alternatives, the top two would be individual, heat exchange systems for every building, and sort of building energy standards for every building.
I'm not too sure that wasn't what I was looking for, but I would just say some communities say that this will be an all-electric community versus and eliminating without Enbridge being there for furnaces and that kind of stuff. I know some communities have said basically this is an all-electric community, and whether they're heat pumps or whatever, they've eliminated natural gas and the fossil fuels associated with that community. So I didn't know how they could mandate something like that unless, as Director Leah said, is that they have to have a willing partner to do that. But I thought that could be built into a secondary plan, so I might be wrong.
I'm sure Andrea would be able to answer that better, but as far as my knowledge goes, it has as far as no electric or all electric or no natural gas goes, it has been either a provincial decision or it has been mandated across the board by council. In most cases, there has been support, but I can't speak for all communities. It really differs city by city.
So I think I get where Councillor Gordon was like, wasn't it East Gwillimbury that first said that all homes in East Gwillimbury will meet the higher standard? Was it Interstar or something standard? So how does a municipality go about? I kind of get we can't change the standard once we've got a secondary plan, but how do we elevate our standards? Or can we?
So Mayor Dolan, we'd have to look into it further, but it would be essentially going through the energy efficiency certification. So what is the standard that the town is trying to achieve, and then applying that to all developments. But I'd want to look at that further in terms of the building team I'd want to talk to in-services further about that and how we would actually, and in power and how we would apply that. So I'd want to take that back for further discussion.
Andrea, for now, my understanding has been, and please correct me, that municipalities can only require what is in the Ontario Building Code and can only incent or advocate measures beyond the building code. And Councillor
Correct. The
Waters,
building code.
I've asked you if you're aware of municipalities in Ontario that have made those requirements. We're not aware of them. So please let us know, because green building standards in other municipalities like Toronto do things, offer financial incentives, for example, for developers to meet those higher standards. They create them and say, we would really like it if your buildings met these standards, but they are not able to legally require them when push comes to shove. That's my understanding.
Okay, I'm going to stop there and ask, please, it's past 10 o'clock, which is our time to adjourn. So I'm going to ask for a motion to extend. I'll say to 10:30, but hopefully we won't take that long. Deputy Mayor Fowler and Councillor Drodge, all those in favor to extend? Thank you. Okay, so are we ready to go to the voters? Their last comments. Councillor Saunders.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before my time, but we're talking about developments and stuff. Did this ever come up for Friday Harbor?
I believe so. And Director Lee, are you aware?
Mayor Dolan, I'm not, I wouldn't want to say 100% that it didn't come up. I don't believe it did, though.
But there were other sustainability issues, like the fish things and the snake ladders and the butternut trees and
yeah, I just don't recall district energy being specifically identified, but I can certainly check and advise council.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Fowler, seconded by Councillor Drodge. Are we ready to call the vote? And right now, just to be clear, it's option 3, which was the staff recommended option, which is to encourage like-minded partners. I haven't got the wording right in front of me right now. Option 3, town assistance to connect partners in a fully private district energy system. Town would look to connect the developer and private partners with the financial and technical resources to develop and operate a private DES. All in favor of the motion? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All those opposed? 1. That's carried. Thanks for some great discussion. Next, we have a RISE recommendation moved by Councillor Drodge, seconded by Councillor Constantine. All those in favor? That is carried. And now we'll go to announcements. Oh, sorry, consideration of adoption of the committee of the whole, moved by Councillor Ices, seconded by Councillor Saunders. All those in favor? That is carried. Notice of motions, we have none this evening, so we'll go to announcements. So, as opposed to going around the table tonight, perhaps we could just have a show of hands, given the late hour. Councillor Richardson.
I'll be quick. Just a reminder quickly again that tomorrow night is Spark happening at the library. It's a fundraising gala for all the amazing programs that the library does offer, like Fresh Air Flicks and the seniors kits and the programs like that. So it's running from 7 till 10. On March 2nd, also at the library is the Radiant Roots Black Cultural Expo that runs from 10 till 3. A big good luck to Miss Jenny's dance studio. They have 120 kids between the ages of 4 and 20. They're all heading into the competition season. So good luck to all of them. Can't wait to hear how you guys all do. Moon Cafe, keep an eye on them. They're doing a big St. Patrick's Day thing, and also a big congratulations to Fernhill Associates on their official grand opening happening tomorrow. They are located in the PharmaSave building. That's it for me.
Thank you. Councillor Drudge.
Thank you, Worship. March 2nd, Innisfil Library is doing a seat packing party from 11 to 1. And on March 16th, there's a St. Patrick's Day dinner at the Churchill United Church, 5 to 7, and it's $25 a person.
Thank you so much. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. On March 2nd, between 2 and 6, the Sheroos have an event at Town Hall. Lynn is a panelist speaker. March 2nd, from 1 to 9, there's a cornhole fundraiser, Phoenix cornhole fundraiser at the Stroud Arena. On Sunday, March 3rd at 3:30, the Spartans, Innisfil Spartans have a playoff game. March 6th, from 6 to 8 p.m. at Town Hall. It's the Ramadan celebration. March 10th at 3:30, the Innisfil Spartans have another playoff game. And every Friday from 10 till 12, there's a free family drop-in play group at the Innisfil Community Church. That's all mine.
Thank you so much, Councillor Ices. We all have to think good thoughts for the Spartans. They drew the Alliston Hornets as their first playoff, and the Hornets are quite the team. So make sure you go out and cheer on our Spartans. Anyone else have any story? Councillor Saunders?
Just let you know, March 9th, we're jumping in the Friday Harbor for the RVH. Cove Cafe has a team. There's 3 of us so far. We're going to jump in the water. So if you wanted to donate, just go to RVH and the Cove Cafe. And that's all I have.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to pushing you, and I mean cheering you on. Did I see any other hands? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Worship. 2 things going on. March 1st is an open bar night at the Innisfil Lions Hall. 7:30, it's a cash bar. There's darts and ping pong. And on that's March 1st, sorry. March 3rd is Kids Bingo at the Lions Hall. Doors open at 11, and you get free access with food bank donations. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Deputy Mayor?
Everything's been covered. I'm not going to well, actually, I had to say this. I have been having fun with the Easter Seals. I've got some dance lessons under my belt now from Lakeside Dance. So kudos to Ashley and Adam Spadafora. They've been really good, and I'm still going to be getting the disco groove. I've got the outfit ordered. I even got the wigs. So looking forward to that on the day it comes up.
Thank you. I just want to thank staff. The last of the winter weekends has ended with a big splash down at Innisfil Beach Park. They were just a wonderful group of events. The weather didn't always cooperate. The youth couldn't skate, but there was a ton of people there anyway. And the effort that goes into all those events, right from our pancake breakfast all the way through, was just a great time. So thanks to everybody. And the only thing that I didn't hear covered was on February the 16th, I attended RVH with MPP Downey, MPP Khanjin, and the Deputy Premier and Minister of Health, Sylvia Jones, for the ribbon cutting for a brand new PET CT scanner. That's at RVH. It's a real game changer. It means this is the first one kind of in our region ever, whereas before everyone had to go to Sunnybrook to get their PET CT scan done. So Really pleased to have that, and even more pleased when Minister Jones was making her comments. She talked about the South Campus in Innisfil, so that was great too. CEO Gershow, any announcements for the good of the community? Seeing none, thanks everyone. We'll go to adjournment or confirming bylaw and then adjournment. So the confirming bylaw, please, is moved by Councillor Ices and Councillor Zanella. All those in favor? That is carried, and we move for adjournment at 10:14 p.m. by Councillor Drodge and Councillor Richardson, and look forward to seeing you all again on March the 13th. Thank you everyone for your attention, and I don't know what the weather's doing outside, but I hope we made a good decision by staying home tonight and doing it electronically. Have a good night, everyone.